Envision studying your entire life to become a mage only to fall short due to your peasant status. But having been slain and reincarnated, you're given the title of the seventh prince in a prestigious royal family. Now, with all the time and resources in the world, you can put your previous lives' knowledge to the test and let your imagination run wild in this new magical world. The series starts with our MC, kicked to the ground and mocked by noble mages, scoffing at our MC's commoner status. Giving our MC a chance. A soul mage steps up, offering our MC a chance to strike them down, but sadly our MC can only muster up a small ball of magic. Our MC recounts how magic is solely defined by which lineage one is born into, and no matter how hard someone works, they can never surpass those born into the correct family. The mage begins casting a spell of their own, instantly incinerating our MC. But our MC can't help but feel joy finally getting to experience what top-tier magic feels like. As a final wish, our MC wishes to be given more time to learn magic. But as his body finally disperses, our MC wakes up in front of several maids, all adoring him. Quickly preparing a spell to defend himself, our MC blasts a massive hole in the castle he's in, all whilst the townsfolk celebrate the birth of the seventh prince of the Saloon Kingdom. Hence our MC's new name is Lloyd. Several years later, the maids of the castle look everywhere for Lloyd, but Lloyd is clearly avoiding any attention, running into several guards only to ask them to keep his current location a secret. As Lloyd runs off, the guards wonder if they should grow closer to Lloyd, remembering how Lloyd is the seventh born in their family, so Lloyd most likely won't inherit the throne. Apparently, shortly after Lloyd was born, he immediately began speaking, reading spell books, and even refusing breast milk, leading many to believe Lloyd was the reincarnation of William Bordeaux himself, the father of sorcery. Following Lloyd, he admits that he is unsure why he can remember his past life. But slipping past the maids, Lloyd makes it to the castle's library filled with hundreds of books. As Lloyd prepares to tuck into some books, Sylpha appears, heading outside only to begin training Lloyd with wooden swords. Taking a quick break, Lloyd wonders why he still needs to train his swordplay, but Sylpha states that it is proper etiquette for any noble to wield a sword, something Lloyd already knew having been with Sylpha for 3 years. Wanting to get the training over with, Lloyd and Sylpha take a stance, both dashing towards each other only to parry each other's slashes. Impressed that Lloyd has improved so much, Lloyd knows Sylpha is still holding back, barely able to keep up as Lloyd has been secretly casting a copy spell to mimic Sylpha's swordplay. Even still, due to Lloyd's smaller body and build, Sylpha begins driving Lloyd into a corner, pushing him back. Assessing the situation, Lloyd tests out another skill to compensate for his childlike body, suddenly increasing his strength along with levitating his body. Now able to completely match Sylpha's slashes and movement, Lloyd forces Sylpha to take things more seriously. But when Lloyd attempts to weave in a sneak attack, Sylpha catches Lloyd off guard. Having already known Lloyd was using magic, Sylpha trips Lloyd, only to disarm and smack him on the head, revealing Lloyd's levitation magic. On top of things, Sylpha points out that Lloyd's sword had been extended to give him better reach. But Sylpha can't help but be amazed that Lloyd was able to cast 2 spells at once, something court mages struggle to do. As Sylpha hugs Lloyd tight, Lloyd feels lucky that Sylpha didn't recognize his physical enhancement spell nor his copy spell, meaning Lloyd was actually casting 4 spells at once. That evening, Sylpha drags Lloyd with her to take a bath in the girls' bathing area, catching the attention of other maids as they tell Lloyd about a powerful demon sealed away in a book by the name of Grimoire, capable of wiping out their whole town. Sylpha adds that the grimoire is hidden in an underground library, but suddenly the girls find it adorable Lloyd is acting strange, all fighting over whose bed Lloyd will be sleeping in tonight. Sneaking off, Lloyd grows intrigued by this hidden library, sneaking around at night with a concealment spell. Easily sneaking past the guards in front of the forbidden library, Lloyd manages to break the powerful seal keeping people out, amazed to see the vast library still standing. Taking a look around, Lloyd begins reading some books, suddenly spotting books in particular begin to float around him. Unveiling its dragon head, the book introduces itself as Grimoire, asking Lloyd to unseal it. Knowing Grimoire is the monster Sylpha spoke about, Lloyd grows skeptical seeing Grimoire offer Lloyd some gold. Inspecting the gold, Lloyd says he knows Grimoire used creation magic along with some dust to make the gold, shocking Grimoire. Hearing that Lloyd plans on strengthening the seal on the demon, Grimoire gets terrified, stating that he has calmed down and no longer wants to wipe out the world, but Lloyd isn't buying it. Desperate, the demon offers to teach Lloyd some ancient magic, but that finally gets Lloyd to listen. Yearning to learn more, Lloyd instantly dispels Grimoire's current seal, surprising the demon as he fires off a devastating ancient spell at Lloyd, shredding the surrounding library. As the smoke clears, the demon is horrified to see Lloyd has erected a perfect barrier, a spell that consumes and nullifies Grimoire's volley of ancient spells. Getting hot and steamy, Lloyd reaches out to the remaining residue of ancient magic around his barrier, allowing the magic to tear away at his finger as Lloyd begs Grimoire to show him more. Pissed, Grimoire duplicates his head, beginning to cast a dual spell, but once again Lloyd's barrier perfectly blocks it. Inspecting the spell, Lloyd knows that such a spell can only be cast by demons with two mouths, but it's simply an advanced version of the same spell from earlier. Terrified at Lloyd's capabilities, Grimoire attempts to flee, but Lloyd has preemptively constructed barriers to keep anything else from being destroyed. Trapping the demon in one of his barriers, Lloyd lets loose a fire spell of his own, burning up the demon all whilst trapped in one of Lloyd's barriers. After a while, Lloyd realizes that Grimoire is still alive, asking Grimoire to wait as Lloyd reverts all the damage done to the library. Amazed by Lloyd's amazing feats, Grimoire decides to call Lloyd Master, but Lloyd is more curious as to why demons can't be slain with magic. Seeing as he is no match, Grimoire offers to be Lloyd's familiar, only to transform into a cuter form. Offering to sit inside Lloyd's pocket, Grimoire takes the chance to dive into Lloyd's mind, mortified by the dense mana a mere child has. Knowing that he stands no chance, Grimoire asks to be called Grim, choosing to obey Lloyd's every command for now. Several days later, a blonde boy suits up like normal, heading through the mansion only to enter the library. As Grim hides, Lloyd greets his big brother Albert, both heading outside to see Albert training. Casting a small spell, Albert knocks down his target flawlessly, something Lloyd expected since Albert is the second prince, both smart and physically capable. Seeing as Albert wants Lloyd to show off what he's got, Lloyd gladly obliges, but not wanting to draw too much attention, Lloyd states he'll only graze the targets. Firing off multiple spells, Lloyd successfully tricks the onlookers into believing Lloyd isn't as competent as Albert, but Lloyd is more curious about adding spin to each of his magic spells. With Albert briefly glaring at Lloyd, Albert asks that Lloyd use the training area as he likes, heading elsewhere with his party. Now alone, Lloyd gets excited, wanting to mimic Grim's dual incantation with two heads. Although Grim states that only demons can cast such a dual spell, Lloyd gets an idea, absorbing Grim into his palm to act like a second mouth. Impressed that Lloyd knew of such a technique, Grim and Lloyd begin chanting simultaneous spells, but Grim instantly gets freaked out not recognizing the spell Lloyd is chanting. Pausing, Grim demands to know what spell Lloyd is casting. Shocked to hear Lloyd was trying a spell stack, purposely mixing multiple spells to have them cast simultaneously. Hearing that Lloyd was trying to stack on 100 spells at once, Grim yells that only 2 to 3 spells can be stacked, otherwise the incantation would take too long. Understanding the situation, Lloyd takes over Grim's mouth, both taking a deep breath only for both mouths to begin chanting powerful spells. Seeing as Lloyd is folding together the essence of 2 magic types itself, Grim fears that the output would be devastating, watching as Lloyd incredibly unleashes a dual spell that ruptures into the skies. At the same time, Albert's retainers wonder why Albert spends so much time with a talentless boy like Lloyd, but Albert corrects them, stating that Lloyd had intentionally grazed all the targets the same way, believing that Lloyd will become a great sage one day. With one of the retainers refusing to believe so, we cut outside to see Lloyd has massacred the surrounding area, even tearing a hole through the stratosphere to reveal the constellations themselves. Briefly admiring the sky, Lloyd rushes to repair the clouds, returning the nighttime back to daytime. The next day, Grimm shows off the newspaper reporting on a mysterious phenomenon tearing apart the skies. But Lloyd is more fixated on the story on the back of the newspaper regarding adventurers conquering a dungeon and bringing back loot. Wanting to explore a dungeon of his own, Grimm struggles to hold back Lloyd, but Lloyd reassures Grimm that he's got everything figured out. Taking out an acorn, Lloyd casts a growth spell, creating an exact clone of himself that mimics his movements. Although Grimm is impressed, Lloyd is still worried, knowing that Silpha observes and tracks every bit of growth Lloyd experiences, meaning a mere dummy clone won't trick everyone. Getting an idea, Lloyd successfully manages to escape the castle undetected, asking Grimm if everything is fine on his end. It turns out that Lloyd had placed Grimm's soul into his clone's body, all whilst absorbing Grimm's body into his palm. Now that Lloyd's clone is more lifelike, Lloyd successfully tricks the maids, but Grimm wonders if he can cause a mess while Lloyd is gone. Sadly, since Lloyd can still communicate with Grimm, Lloyd thanks Grimm for all the help, flustering Grimm as he chooses to make Lloyd proud and not act up. Having flown far enough from the castle, Lloyd wonders where he can find a dungeon, suddenly halting as he spots a pink-haired girl fleeing from some monsters. In an instant, the girl sends one of the monsters flying, blitzing around only to begin dismantling the monsters, finishing off with an energy blast that shreds the monsters. Having witnessed everything, Lloyd recognizes the girl's techniques as a form of chi, something martial artists use. Having detected Lloyd, the girl calls Lloyd to show himself, but when Lloyd hesitates, the girl marks Lloyd as an enemy, rushing to his location. Not wanting to unveil his identity as the seventh prince, Lloyd manages to come up with a disguise, created using Lloyd's current looks and Albert's physical structure. Lloyd takes on the name of Robert, learning the girl's name is Tao, but Tao is revealed to have fallen for Lloyd's disguise. Having been locked away due to her training, Tao states that she'll make Robert her boyfriend no matter what, agreeing to accompany Lloyd into a nearby dungeon, since she is a B-ranked adventurer. Upon entering the dungeon, Tao begins carving through the monsters to impress Lloyd, but sadly Lloyd is more interested in the shiny ores nearby. Venturing deeper, the two strike up a conversation, learning that Tao had been traveling alone for a while. Whipping up a quick meal, Lloyd asks about Tao's chi techniques, surprising Tao since chi is very similar to mana, as chi circulates based on breathing techniques. Tao takes the chance to flirt with Lloyd, but gets surprised seeing Lloyd beginning to breathe strangely, realizing that Lloyd is trying to mimic her chi breathing. Warning Lloyd against it, Tao can't help but notice how stern Lloyd is about learning chi breathing, agreeing to teach Lloyd anything she knows, which earns her a smile from Lloyd. At the same time, Grimm can't help but giggle at how vast Lloyd's obsession with magic is, suddenly realizing that Silpha has appeared. Back in the dungeon, Tao shows off a chi blast, easily destroying the boss of the dungeon only to point Lloyd to the final treasure chest. Lloyd grows curious as to the overall build of the treasure chest itself, something Tao finds adorable. But on top of things, Tao notices Lloyd's breathing has grown stable, celebrating as Tao has finally found a perfect match that her family has to approve of. Finally opening up the chest, a mysterious blade appears, cutting down on Tao, but Lloyd manages to read the attack, pulling Tao aside. As a pool of darkness spreads from the chest, a lich appears, exciting Lloyd as a more worthy dungeon boss has arrived. Exuding a cold aura, Tao begins to panic, asking Lloyd to leave the dungeon first. But when Lloyd refuses, Tao has no choice but to forcibly push Lloyd out of the dungeon. Evading the creature's strange magic, Tao states that a lich is a creature even A-ranked adventurers struggle with. Therefore, she plans on stalling the creature long enough for Lloyd to escape. Flying through the air, Lloyd is sad as he wanted to watch the lich in action, but erecting several barriers, Lloyd halts his movements. When Lloyd asks for Grimm's advice, Lloyd notices Grimm is barely responding, begging Lloyd to come home. At the same time, Tao grows more fatigued, looking for an opening to escape herself. But the Lich suddenly speaks up, having identified Tao's Qi technique. The Lich scoffs at Tao's inferior technique to magic, annoying Tao as she states that Lloyd was the only person that thought of Qi as interesting, unlike every magic user Tao ran into. Breathing in, Tao bolts forward, clashing into the Lich's barrier. But having anticipated such a thing, Tao begins to fire off hundreds of punches, ultimately breaking a hole in the Lich's barrier. Collapsing to the ground, Tao knows she has completely exhausted her energy, hopelessly watching as the Lich appears behind her, mocking her pathetic attempt. Choosing to end the battle, the Lich fires off another shard of magic. But Lloyd appears, nonchalantly blocking the spell along with reassuring Tao that he's here to help. Seeing as Lloyd needs to return home to Grim quickly, both the Lich and Lloyd begin chanting spells. But in an instant, Lloyd dashes behind the Lich, a technique the Lich doesn't recognize. Firing off a volley at Lloyd, the Lich watches as Lloyd begins stalling by erecting a barrier. But taking a deep breath, Lloyd combines a movement spell with his Qi breathing technique. Dashing around the Lich, Lloyd notices the Lich firing more magic at his barrier. But Lloyd's barrier easily defends, giving Lloyd more time to perfect his breathing. Seeing as his own barrier is slowing him down, Lloyd shatters his own barrier, accelerating further as he maneuvers around the dungeon, all whilst evading the Lich's magic. Finally condensing two techniques into one, Lloyd counters the Lich's magic with a technique he just created, firing off hundreds of slashes, all whilst tuning the spell's speed and sharpness. Terrified to see a mage using Qi, the Lich attempts to hold on, but seeing Lloyd's technique shredding his spells, the Lich is forced to project a barrier, but Lloyd's technique cuts clean through both the barrier and the Lich itself. Dazzled by Lloyd's show of strength, Tao and Lloyd finally claim the dungeon's treasure, disappointed to see a mere rusty blade infused with mana as their reward. Out of nowhere, the dungeon begins to crumble, beginning to retract the treasure chest, leaving Lloyd and Tao to keep the old blade only. Wanting to inspect the treasure chest itself, Lloyd sticks around to take the chest as well, but they are both forced to escape before the dungeon closes. Outside, Tao asks about Lloyd's new technique he created, something Lloyd isn't sure of himself, but Tao recognizes it as a secret Qi technique she has only heard of in tales. As Lloyd flies off, Tao promises to grow stronger so that Lloyd can finally pay more attention to her. But Tao forgets to ask where she can find Lloyd. Flying through different regions, Lloyd finally returns home, spotting his clone all beat up. Grim reveals that Silpha had asked for a sparring match like usual, but grew disappointed seeing how weak Lloyd's clone had gotten, beating his clone senselessly. Showing off the dungeon's knife to Grim, Lloyd douses the knife with hot water, only to scrape off a layer of mana essence. Lloyd explains the mana essence is used to enchant any weapon, with the dungeon blade in particular being enchanted with a power booster. Placing the mana essence into a flask with water, Lloyd shakes up the flask, only to cast a purification spell in order to extract the ingredients of the mana essence. Revealed to be a mixture of oil, silver, and hematite, Grim recognizes the ingredients as materials from a monster core, giving Lloyd the idea to create more essence since he had retrieved the dungeon's core in the form of the treasure chest. Needing silver, Lloyd rushes to ask his father, King Charles, for a bag of silver coins, only to begin melting the silver down. Next, Lloyd spars with Silpha for a wager, managing to catch Silpha off guard with a sneak attack combined with some magic, but Silpha had reacted fast enough, appearing from one of Lloyd's creations, only to defeat Lloyd. Even after losing, Silpha agrees to give Lloyd the jar of oil he had asked for, scaring Grim as Silpha was even able to defeat Lloyd with her pure swordsmanship skills alone. With all the ingredients needed, Grim and Lloyd complete the mana essence, rushing to Albert to ask for a weapon to enchant. Seeing as his adorable Lloyd is requesting something of him, Albert asks for his knights to hand over their weapons, all immediately offering Lloyd all their weapons to enchant. The knights know that enchanting weapons usually go horribly, all bidding their precious swords goodbye as they have no faith in the 10-year-old Lloyd to enchant their weapons. But having heard all of the knights mocking his master, Grim gets fired up to prove the knights wrong. As Lloyd begins layering on 2 to 3 enchantments, Lloyd unfortunately shatters the first blade, being too weak to withstand Lloyd's enchantments. Soldiering on, Lloyd works through the night, only to report to Albert that he managed to enchant 50 out of 120 swords, frightening Albert, as even the greatest enchanter has only a 10% success rate. Inspecting the blades, one of the knights refuses to believe Lloyd enchanted the blades, but when the knight goes to sheath his blade, his holster is suddenly cut into 2 by the newly enchanted sword. Spotting a glowing blade in particular, Albert is mesmerized by the enchantments, offering Lloyd to join him on a monster hunt given by their father. Heading out of town early the next day, Lloyd accompanies Albert and Silpha, all heading towards a forest via carriage. Lloyd asks where the monsters they are hunting will be, excited to hear the monsters reside near a lake, especially since Lloyd can see how strong his enchanted blades are. As Silpha admires Lloyd's adorable expressions, Albert can't help but tease Silpha for clinging on to Lloyd too much, but Albert is silent seeing Silpha draw her sword. Just then, Silpha detects creatures approaching, spotting that the monsters are all wielding steel equipment. Pumped up, the knights protecting Lloyd and Albert all rush into formations, ready to test out their new enchanted gear. All whilst Grim spots Lloyd using a chi breathing technique to detect all objects in his surroundings. Plus, Lloyd always has his barrier spell ready to protect himself. Seeing the knights engage the monster, the knights flawlessly cut through the creatures, all thanks to Lloyd's enchantments. Praising Lloyd, Albert declares that Lloyd truly is a prodigy, but they both suddenly spot a monster rushing them. Before the two can react, Tao appears, dispatching the creature. Having sensed a cute guy nearby, Tao had rushed over, crouching beside Lloyd only to realize Lloyd is using a chi breathing technique. Plus, Lloyd looks very similar to Robert. As Tao senses another monster attacking from behind, Silpha is forced to save her, demanding that Tao step away from her precious Lloyd. Stopping the girls from fighting, Albert asks Tao to accompany them, all setting up camp for the night near a lake. Thanking Tao for escorting them, Tao points out how although Albert is cute, Albert wasn't the cute guy she was detecting. Hiding from Tao, Lloyd realizes it's his chi breathing that may blow his cover, choosing to lay low and hide in his tent for the rest of the night. But Lloyd suddenly realizes that Silpha was changing in his tent. Demanding to know why Silpha is sharing a room with him, Silpha states that she is the only person that can protect Lloyd, trapping Lloyd between her thighs. Entering the tent, Tao is flustered seeing Silpha pinning Lloyd down with her body, swiftly evading a dagger thrown by Silpha. As the girls begin to bicker and argue, Lloyd manages to sneak away, but Albert teases Lloyd for attracting so many girls. Albert points out how Silpha has changed a lot ever since she started looking after Lloyd, shaking as he remembers something. But at the same time, Silpha and Tao beat up the knights watching them arguing. As Silpha puts on some clothes, Tao says she has been hired to fix up a nearby shrine, but before Tao can leave, a monster appears smashing up a portion of the campsite. As everyone prepares to engage the creature, they all recognize it to be a bear wolf, but as the knights begin attacking the creature, Grim is seen acting weird due to the broken shrine nearby. As Tao distracts the creature, she buys enough time for Albert to draw his sword, suddenly casting an infernal spell that incinerates the wolf in one shot. Surprising everyone, they all thank Lloyd for Albert's newly enchanted sword, but Grim finally remembers that the nearby shrine used to seal a powerful demon. As the smoke clears from Albert's explosion, the corpse of the wolf, along with various other monsters, suddenly appear, giving rise to Demon Pazuzu, who had been hiding in the wolf's mouth. Pissed that people are slaying its servants, Pazuzu has its monsters attack, but Albert soon realizes the monsters have insane regeneration. Lloyd asks if Grim and Pazuzu are friends, but Grim says they aren't, uttering that Pazuzu is puppeteering the monsters with its dense mana along with regenerating their wounds. Intrigued, Lloyd asks Grim to teach him the same mana transmutation technique as Pazuzu, but at the same time Pazuzu begins insulting the humans for losing slowly at the hands of his beast army. When Pazuzu begins to insult Lloyd, Silpha suddenly snaps, asking Lloyd to remain hiding. With Silpha's terrifying aura erupting, Silpha is offered a role to join Pazuzu's servants. But Silpha scoffs at the idea of serving a disgusting creature, declaring she'll slay Pazuzu. Giddy, Pazuzu reminds Silpha that the monsters will continue to heal as long as he channels mana into them. Seeing Silpha shake, Pazuzu suspects that Silpha is able to sense its vast mana pool, but Silpha instead mocks Pazuzu's stinky breath. Annoyed, Pazuzu rushes Silpha with his wolf servant. But in an instant, Silpha severs the wolf's legs before it could do any harm. As Pazuzu begins to regenerate the wolf's legs, Albert and the others realize the monsters have stopped moving entirely, reasoning that Pazuzu can't control the creatures whilst it's prioritizing healing itself. Off to the side, Grim points out that transmuting mana is quite difficult since the mana needs to be correctly tuned to fit the intended target. Surprisingly, Lloyd manages to transmute a flower with his mana, even matching the color and scent of the flower. Out of nowhere, Silpha slams Pazuzu and his servant to the ground, picking up one of Lloyd's enchanted swords, admiring how finely enchanted the blade is, only to prepare to finish off the demon. Pazuzu is weirded out by how Silpha is acting, beginning to encircle Silpha, all whilst choosing to insult Lloyd in order to get Silpha to drop her guard. Seeing an opening, Pazuzu manages to clamp on his Silpha with his wolf servant. But Silpha has used the opportunity to get close to the demon, revealing her dual sword techniques that shreds the bear wolf along with Pazuzu's body from the inside. Continuing to hack away at the demon, Silpha begins ramping up her speed to ensure Pazuzu is defeated. But Lloyd takes the chance to memorize Silpha's body shape with his new transmutation skill, all whilst Silpha coldly marches towards the demon, preparing to take its life. Glaring at the demon on its knees, Silpha watches as Albert and the others take down the remaining beasts, all staying vigilant until Silpha slays Pazuzu. Out of nowhere, a potent smog fills the air, bringing all the humans to their knees as Pazuzu seems to have evolved. Pazuzu states that he had escaped his 100-year seal finally, annoyed that all his hard work nurturing his servants have all gone to waste. With a single slap, Pazuzu knocks Silpha back, all whilst Albert helplessly watches. As Silpha struggles to breathe, Pazuzu flies in for the final blow, but Tao intercepts the attack, revealed to be unaffected by the smog. Seeing Silpha finally collapsing due to Pazuzu's smog, Tao stays alert, barely able to detect Pazuzu appear behind her. As Tao throws out a kick, she ends up getting snatched up from the feet and punched, but Pazuzu wonders why Tao is unaffected by his smog. Seeing Tao breathing weirdly, Pazuzu realizes Tao is using a strange breathing technique, but forcing herself away from the demon, Tao is forced to kick and blast Pazuzu away, swiftly stabilizing her breathing, but suddenly realizes a monster has snuck up on her. Barely able to stop the jaws of one of the beasts from clamping down, Tao watches as Pazuzu rises back up, emitting its smog as it demands Tao serve it. Seeing her life flash before her eyes, Tao manages to survive Pazuzu's aura, declaring that her savior will arrive soon. Having heard enough, Pazuzu's servant bites down on Tao, prompting Pazuzu to head over to retrieve Silpha's unconscious body. Declaring that he'll make Silpha his slave, Pazuzu reveals that he had slayed his servant's parents, only to have the monsters believe Pazuzu was their original parents, something Lloyd states is terrible. Realizing that Lloyd is unaffected, Pazuzu demands to know who Lloyd is, spotting Grim, a fellow demon who is serving a mere child. Before Grim can warn Pazuzu of Lloyd's abilities, Pazuzu sends his servants to attack Lloyd, but seeing as this is the perfect chance, Lloyd begins transmuting his mana. Creating the picture of a field of flowers, Lloyd manages to calm the beasts, briefly cuddling with them only to retrieve the unconscious Tao, covering her up with his jacket. Impressed to see Lloyd as a competent mage, Pazuzu tries to order his servants around, but the beasts instead turn their fangs onto Pazuzu, tearing away at the demon that killed their parents. Having sustained a decent amount of damage, Pazuzu chooses to dispose of his own servants, slamming them together only to kick them to the ground. Seeing Pazuzu harming his own servants, Lloyd wonders why demons can't be defeated with magic. Something Grimm mentions is probably since it's never been done before. As Pazuzu's mana begins to swell up, the surrounding area begins to perish, but Lloyd is more curious as to how much mana it will take to defeat a demon. Revealing his own mana pool, Pazuzu suddenly freezes at the sight of Lloyd's mana. Something Grimm knew Lloyd was concealing, and is the reason Pazuzu's smog didn't affect Lloyd whatsoever. Finally able to let loose, Lloyd attempts to trap Pazuzu in a barrier, but Pazuzu barely manages to escape. Realizing that Lloyd is attempting to cage him, Pazuzu attempts to flee, but Lloyd is dead set on trapping Pazuzu with his barriers. Floating all throughout the skies, Pazuzu continues to evade capture, all whilst Grimm learns Lloyd is capable of casting 20 spells at once. But making use of Grimm, Lloyd increases his spell output. Seeing as there are no escape routes in the skies to flee, Pazuzu dives into the sea, terrified to see Lloyd is still hunting him down in the water. Proud of himself, Pazuzu manages to hold out, believing that he's finally escaped. But as he breaches the water's surface, Pazuzu realizes Lloyd had been toying with him this entire time, having been trapped in one of Lloyd's larger barriers. Attempting to find a way out of Lloyd's cage, Pazuzu refuses to be one of Lloyd's lab rats. But Lloyd is confused at how hypocritical Pazuzu is, seeing as Pazuzu had used his servants as lab rats. Seeing Lloyd prepare multiple spells, Pazuzu begins begging for his life. Making use of the strongest fire, wind, earth, and water spells, Lloyd forms a 100-length sequence incantation, boosting the spell's cast time by threefold, only to surround Pazuzu with his incantation. Unleashing his incantation, Lloyd proudly claims that he is currently casting 240 spells per minute, but not even 5 minutes later, Lloyd is forced to halt his incantation. Seeing Pazuzu drained, Grimm points out that magic to demons is like light and sound to humans, and overwhelming a human with light and sound will drain them, just like what Lloyd did to Pazuzu with his magic. Seeing as Pazuzu has completely given up, Lloyd focuses on Albert and the others who have begun to wake up, rushing to their side to explain what transpired whilst they were asleep, all whilst Grimm and Pazuzu have a chat. Grimm advises that mages that have the most fun will ultimately live the longest, something Pazuzu also realizes as he finally passes away. Seeing the ashes of Pazuzu, Grimm takes the chance to absorb what remains, able to restore a fraction of his original form, what was lost. Back with Lloyd, Lloyd seems to have convinced everyone that a powerful mage by the name of Robert defeated the demon, exciting Tao as she demands to know where Robert is. As the gang return to report their hunt to the king scolds Albert for not being more prepared for the monster hunt, wondering where Robert and Tao are, wanting to reward them. Sadly, Albert reveals that Robert was never seen by anyone. As for Tao, she ran off in search of Robert. Changing topics, Albert asks for his father to consider Lloyd as a possible candidate for the throne, stating that Lloyd's genius with enchantments may prove fruitful for a ruler. Impressed to hear his seventh son is so gifted, the king asks if Lloyd would join his brothers to fight for the throne, but Lloyd flat out rejects the offer. Later that day, Lloyd is seen playing with a fluffy beowulf, having followed Lloyd home from the forest. Grimm begins to get jealous seeing how much Lloyd is admiring his new pet, choosing to fluff himself up to get Lloyd's attention. Seeing as Silpha is approaching, Lloyd quickly stuffs Grimm inside the beowulf's fur, only to tell Silpha that his new pet will be called Shiro. As Silpha and Lloyd brainstorm tricks they can teach to Shiro, Albert and the king both chat about Lloyd's future, both expecting great things from Lloyd. Getting to work, Lloyd manages to teach Shiro basic tricks, but wonders how he should train Shiro to execute more tougher actions. Having tried to infuse his mana with more specific commands, Shiro unfortunately isn't able to understand Lloyd's complex task, prompting Lloyd and Silpha to wonder if there is a monster expert that can help. With them both suddenly remembering Princess Elise, they all head over to her garden tower. Grimm learns that Elise is the 6th princess of Saloon, being Lloyd's older sister by 3 years. Out of nowhere, Elise pounces on Lloyd, wrestling him only to give him a greeting smooch. Seeing Lloyd knocked out, Eris, Elise' maid, reprimands Elise for going too far with Lloyd. Turning to see Shiro, Elise can't help but cuddle with the adorable creature, but seeing this, Lloyd asks if Elise can show off one of her own monsters. Out of nowhere, a lesser Fenrir appears, snatching away Sylpha's headband. Lloyd is shocked, seeing as the monster slipped past his detection. Lloyd is intrigued as to what command Elise gave to the Fenrir in order to have it time its approach. Asking for Elise to teach him all she knows, Elise gladly obliges, revealing that a deep bond with any animal will involve lots of love. Demonstrating her powers, Elise calls for the animals to surround her, stating that love is a technique anyone can learn. With Elise sending her animals to tease Sylpha and Eris, they all suddenly spot Lloyd is calmly taming some animals of his own. Having not considered using love before, Lloyd begins to think of how he should love Shiro. All while Sylpha dreams of the day Lloyd shows affection for her. Reconstructing Elise's taming technique, Lloyd notices that Elise had channeled mana into her animals via her head, allowing her to communicate with nothing but thoughts. Trying it out, Lloyd manages to establish a connection with Shiro, having him run circles only to leap into the air. Happy to see it worked, Lloyd and Shiro cuddle for a bit, all whilst Eris praises Lloyd for replicating a monster tamer's technique. Elise cries that love is the most important factor for taming monsters, something Lloyd doesn't disagree with, especially since the tamer must get to know the monster they want to tame first. Seeing Lloyd adorably explain love, Eris, Sylpha, and Elise all adore Lloyd, rushing to his side only to begin loving him. As Lloyd begins heading back, Sylpha says they'll be sparring again today, but out of nowhere Albert appears, asking to borrow Lloyd for a bit. Albert calls for Lloyd's older brother Dien, the fourth prince, to show himself. Heading to a small smeltery, Dien demands to see Lloyd enchant a blade for himself. But Albert defuses the situation by revealing that Dien always wanted to be a blacksmith, even traveling to the nation of Bartram to learn smithing when he was 10. Sitting down, Dien watches as Lloyd begins enchanting a sword, refusing to believe Lloyd has learnt so much at such a young age. But when Lloyd finishes up his enchantment, Dien can't help but tremble seeing how magnificent Lloyd's enchantments are. Getting excited, Dien states that Lloyd can help Dien achieve his dream of creating the ultimate spellbound sword, a weapon that has enchantments built into it and layered onto it. Dien reveals that he was never capable of casting magic like most mages. Therefore, Dien wants even normal humans to wield magic when they swing a spellbound sword around. Only interested in the production process of a sword, Lloyd agrees to help Dien out, both getting to work as Dien sets the goal of creating a sword that can shoot fire. First, Dien heats up a piece of steel, asking Lloyd to first layer on a fraction of the fire incantation, but the steel immediately shatters. As Lloyd attempts a weaker enchantment, Dien can't help but notice Sylpha and Shiro interested, having Sylpha help out with hammering the steel, but sadly Lloyd's powerful enchantments are still too strong for the piece of steel. Completely baffled, Lloyd racks his head for an alternative solution, reassured by Dien that Lloyd could try as many enchantments as he likes, especially since Dien bought a bulk of mana essence for cheap. Suddenly realizing something, Lloyd inspects the mana essence. Realizing that the hematite in the essence is way too weak, Lloyd asks if Dien has any spare hematite lying around. Upon hearing that Dien doesn't, Sylpha offers to accompany Lloyd to a dungeon, both heading to the Adventurers Guild. Entering the guild, Lloyd greets Katarina the receptionist, only to fill out a form for his details. Next, Lloyd is asked to place his hands on a crystal ball, something Lloyd knows is used to measure one's stats. Fearing that his current power level will destroy the orb, Lloyd begins compressing his mana, managing to achieve an overall rank of E. As the other adventurers laugh at Lloyd's poor rank, the receptionist points out that Lloyd has a magic stat of a rank, making him comparable to the mighty Silver Blader, something the other adventurers refuse to accept. Legend has it that the Silver Blader flawlessly carved through every dungeon they entered, achieving an A-rank status only to disappear. Seeing the adventurers continue to mock Lloyd, Sylpha can't help but scare the men a bit, revealing herself to be the infamous Silver Blader who supposedly vanished. When Sylpha attempts to re-register herself, the receptionist sadly states that Sylpha has been demoted to C rank. Unfortunate, since every party needs a B rank if they want to enter dungeons. At that moment, Tao appears offering to assist, seeing as she is an A rank adventurer, but Sylpha quickly ignores her. Sylpha learns that Tao had failed to find Robert, even searching various dungeons for him. But willing to compromise, Tao demands to have a date with Albert as reward if she helps Lloyd explore a dungeon. With Sylpha retrieving Lloyd's jacket from Tao, Lloyd admires how interesting of a life Sylpha must have had in the past, hearing that Sylpha in her past had only ever failed to take down the Assassin's Guild, a ragtag group of adventurers. Having picked out a dungeon, the gang immediately set out, explaining their goals to Tao, swiftly working their way to retrieve the core of the dungeon. At the same time, Albert checks in on Diane, happy to see Diane and Lloyd are getting along well, but Albert states that a war will break out soon. Trembling at the thought of being unable to help, Diane declares that he'll create the spellbound swords to help his kingdom, spotting Lloyd and the others returning. Getting back to work, Diane and Lloyd manage to finish off their first blade, heading straight to the training area only to eradicate their test targets, terrifying everyone. Having named the Blade D-Lord, Lloyd heads to bed, exhausted from spending the entire day fine-tuning the blades along with mass-producing them. Rewarding Shiro with some belly rubs, Lloyd notes how Albert seemed awfully stiff throughout the day, but suddenly Lloyd detects a strange presence in their garden. Impressed, Shiro wasn't able to pick up the mysterious presence. As the mysterious figure begins running around the garden, Lloyd suddenly appears, asking to have a chat. When the figure attempts to flee, Lloyd simply erects a barrier, cutting off any escape. Seeing no other option, the figure unveils their hood, apologizing as she blasts Lloyd with a sweet scent, but Lloyd realizes it's poison. Attempting to cleanse the negative effects, Lloyd suddenly collapses, having failed to neutralize the girl's poison. Lloyd deduces that the girl is using a new type of toxin, hearing stories about those with strange abilities, people known as the Blighted. The girl confirms herself to be the Poison Blighted, Ren the Poison Moth. Heading over to Lloyd's barrier, Ren instantly shatters it with a kick, having weakened it with her poison. Ren reassures Lloyd he won't pass away, warning Lloyd of the side effects he may experience in the next few days. Just like that, Ren disappears, allowing Lloyd to finally rest a bit. Having seen everything, Grim learns that Lloyd is actually canceling out Ren's poison with a breathing technique, wondering why Lloyd didn't just capture her. Lloyd reveals that he plans on tailing Ren to her hideout, recognizing Ren as one of the 6 Assassin Guild members. Lloyd gets excited, wondering what the other members' special abilities are, praising Ren for concealing her presence so well, but Lloyd has already figured out their trick. As Lloyd rushes off, Sylpha and Shiro barely miss Lloyd, cutting over to the assassin members as they berate Ren for getting caught so easily. Ren states that she has discovered that the royals are mass-producing spellbound swords, a sign that there is a war coming. When Ren tries to make suggestions, the assassin members cut Ren off, reminding Ren that their leader Jade is already gone. Just then, the members detect someone watching them, forcing Lloyd to reveal himself as the members mention how they've heard great things about the 7th Prince. Seeing as Lloyd has discovered them, they have no choice but to take Lloyd out, but Lloyd is excited to see what the enemy has in store, releasing his barrier. Taking a fighting stance that mimics Tao's, Lloyd draws in a green headman, able to defend against most of his strikes, but suddenly spots one of the man's punches wrap around his arm. Introducing himself as the warp-blighted Babylon the Giant Rat. Knowing that Babylon's movements exceed what mages are capable of, Lloyd suddenly realizes someone is behind him, abruptly collapsing to the ground as Crow the Dark Raptor binds him with a curse. Following up, Galilea attempts to pummel Lloyd, but Lloyd uses brute strength to escape Crow's curse, but sadly gets entangled in Galilea's spiderwebs. With no choice, Lloyd ditches his clothes, ecstatic to have run into a user with curse speech along with people able to transmute their mana. Sensing another attacker, Lloyd begins evading several slashes from Talia, intrigued to see Talia impale her own leg, only to feel the pain in his legs as well. Introducing herself as the pain blighted, Talia gets weirded out seeing how happy Lloyd is, watching as Lloyd analyzes and reverses Talia's wound both on Talia and himself. Intrigued to see how Talia's reflection magic works, Lloyd traces Silpha's battle style, terrifying the assassin members as they reveal past trauma facing the Silverblader. With Lloyd's aura erupting, the assassin members all scramble from their positions, but Babylon is Lloyd's first target. As Lloyd catches up to Babylon, Lloyd slams him into the ground, impressed to see Babylon relax his body so as to not sustain too much damage. Appearing around Lloyd, Galilea, and Crow pinch him, but Lloyd predicts Crow's cursed speech attack, slipping out of the pinch and allowing the curse to blast Galilea into Talia instead. Before Crow can chant another curse, Lloyd appears behind him, dicing up and slamming Crow into the ground, perfectly mimicking Silpha's techniques. Off to the side, Galilea struggles to separate himself from Talia, but since his webs have bound them together, Talia's clothes are accidentally pulled apart. Seeing an opening, Lloyd rushes to attack Talia, warned by Talia that the damage will be reflected on Lloyd himself, but Lloyd could care less. Talia is slammed into a wall, making Lloyd euphoric, finally experiencing pain for the first time in a while. Seeing as Galilea has managed to sneak up behind Lloyd, Lloyd employs Tao's martial arts, blasting Galilea into a nearby wall as well, terrifying Rin. Before Lloyd can engage onto Run, Galilea asks for Lloyd to leave Rin alone, revealing that Run is unable to control her toxins. Lloyd suddenly realizes that all the assassin members aren't really good at controlling their powers, watching as Galilea rushes him. But Lloyd suddenly hits Galilea with a special attack. Pissed, Rin throws a kick whilst releasing her toxins, but Lloyd simply blocks it with his barrier, asking Run to calm down. Right on cue, Galilea utters that he is fine. Lloyd states he has engraved Galilea's curse directly into their body, giving him more control of their curses, bringing Galilea into tears. Applying the same trick onto the others, the members begin to celebrate, finally able to toggle their powers on and off. Off to the side, Rin is seen holding back her tears, finally able to wear whatever she likes without accidentally releasing her poison. Seeing the others taking care of Lloyd, Rin reminds everyone that Lloyd and his family are producing weapons to spark a war, but Grimm brushes them off as mere rumors. Before Grimm and Rin can bicker some more, the others mention how they should at least tell Lloyd about their past, revealing that they have a leader by the name of Jade, known as the Phantom Blighted and has the ability to teleport. Flashing back, one day Jade had reappeared out of nowhere, having been teleported to Egypt but had finally made it back to their hideout. Jade shows off their new guild emblem, stating that their Assassin's Guild will take the jobs normal adventurers wouldn't, and upon completion, they'll leave behind their emblem to prove to the world they can operate in society as well. Before Jade can add anymore, he is teleported away, but around the same time the Assassin's Guild found out that the Warlord of Lordist was preparing for a war. Out of nowhere, a mysterious envelope appears, but before the contents is revealed, we cut to several moments later where Silpha and Shiro have busted into the Assassin Guild's hideout. Seeing as Lloyd has left behind a letter, Silpha reports her findings to Albert, who holds back his anger, fearing that the Assassin's Guild has kidnapped Lloyd and brought Lloyd to Lordist. Worst of all, Silpha shows off the sticky clothes Lloyd had left behind, horrifying everyone as Albert and Silpha both declare they'll wage war if it means Lloyd will return safe. Cutting back to when the envelope appeared, Galilea reads that Jade had officially overthrown the rulers of Lordist, making the assassin members celebrate. But inspecting the letter himself, Lloyd can't help but smirk. Immediately heading out, Lloyd sends everyone flying with him towards Jade's location. But we learn that Galilea and Run had asked if Lloyd could help Jade fix his teleportation curse as well. But Lloyd points out that Jade no longer needs his help, since the letter seems to have been perfectly teleported to their location. Lloyd knows that teleportation magic itself is very rare, especially being able to control it, making the members wonder if Jade was lying about his curse this whole time. Regardless, Rin says she still wants to reunite with Jade, exciting Lloyd as he says he'll accompany them. Seeing as Rin is starting to doubt Jade, Lloyd cheers Rin up, making Rin's heart flutter a bit. Having been flying for only 10 minutes, Lloyd is forced to stop, realizing that everyone is dizzy, but seeing as they need food, Rin runs off into the woods to catch some food. Babylon reveals that Rin grew up in the forest, wanting to show off her skills to Lloyd, but Rin is revealed to have a tragic past, having accidentally slayed her own parents with her poison. It was then when Jade took her in and introduced her to everyone, all agreeing to help raise Rin as one of their own. As the gang spend time designing clothes to neutralize Rin's poison, Rin couldn't help but break down, finally finding a family she can rely on, and even considering Jade as her big brother. Hearing such a wholesome story, Lloyd says he really wants to meet Jade, surprising Grim. Right on cue, Rin returns, whipping up a dense stew, terrifying everyone as they wonder if a prince like Lloyd should be fed such a food item. Surprisingly, Grim and Lloyd devour the stew, prompting everyone to join in, enjoying the meal like a family. Flashing back, there was a day when Jade had announced their guild members were all getting bounties, exciting everyone as they're finally being recognized as actual people. Seeing everyone celebrating, Jade reveals that he is actually the third prince to the Lordist family, adding that his family are diabolical people who all fiend for war. Jade mentions how he had planned to use the Assassin's Guild as a tool to stop his family from inciting war, but seeing as his members are all calm, Jade wonders why they're not angry at him. The members all remind Jade that they all have hidden pasts as well, therefore they don't really care what Jade's intentions are, as long as Jade remains a family member with everyone. Impressed to hear his guild members are willing to commit crimes for him, Jade states that he must claim the throne by himself, not wanting his assassin members to have to dirty their hands. Jade admits that he may never return, but he promises he'll one day claim the throne for himself and finally grant all outcasts a place to stay. Walking the final steps towards Jade's manor, the gang point out how adorable Lloyd is when he is asleep, all reasoning they should go on ahead and leave Lloyd behind, not wanting Lloyd to get caught up in their own personal drama with Jade. Hearing this, Grim offers to accompany them, knowing that Lloyd can easily fend for himself. Upon climbing the castle walls, the gang are surprised to see a party set up for them, just like what Jade had promised in the letter. Before the gang can head back and retrieve Lloyd, they're interrupted by an egg-shaped looking man, inviting them all into the courtyard where they're officially welcomed as the guest of honor. With everyone in disbelief, Rin hugs Grim tight, getting nervous to reunite with Jade. Finally, Jade appears nonchalantly, annoying everyone as they watch Jade switch clothing, relieved to see Jade is the same as usual. Pushed forward, Rin struggles to express all the emotions bottled in her head, but seeing as everything is fine, Grim begins flying back to Lloyd. Out of nowhere, the surrounding attendees transform, all whilst Jade orders everyone to bow down, terrifying the assassin members as they wonder how Jade has Crow's cursed speech, not to mention it's way more powerful. When Rin demands to know what is happening, Jade simply offers the assassin members to the other attendees, allowing the attendees to do what they please with the assassin members. Blasting Jade with a beam, Grim cries for everyone to run, but before Grim can do anything else, Jade teleports behind him, kicking and blowing Grim away. As Jade changes his clothing, we cut to Lloyd, who has finally awoken, spotting a beaten-up Grim beside him. Grim struggles to explain the situation to Lloyd, all whilst the assassin members realize the attendees before them are actually demons from the Netherworld. Appearing beside the members, Jade reveals that he too is being controlled by a demon, Geesarm, the catastrophe from the Netherworld. Geesarm reveals that Jade is no longer alive, having struggled to hold on, but eventually Jade was forced to relinquish his body. Hearing all of this, the assassin members get pissed, preparing to unleash on a Geesarm. But Geesarm continues to reveal all the torture methods he performed on Jade in order to ensure Jade's mind would never recover. As the demons begin begging for a body of their own to inhabit, Gisarm warns his minions that Ren's body is quite poisonous, but Gisarm suddenly notices a strange marking on Ren's body. Unable to recognize the spell from Jade's memories alone, Gisarm uses his cursed speech, demanding Ren explain where she got the marking, but Ren bites her tongue to silence herself. With Gisarm cursing Ren to sell out the person that placed the spell on her, Ren fights for dear life, suddenly watching as Lloyd's barriers surround all the assassin members, only for an incineration ray to light up the surroundings. With the ray tearing a massive hole in the castle's courtyard, the assassin members look into the skies, only to spot Lloyd triumphantly appear to even out the playing field. Having scared the demons back into their bodies, Lloyd checks on the others, only to choose to heal Ren's tongue. Lloyd starts by ordering the assassin members to run, knowing that Gisarm is solely after their bodies. As the demons wonder if their master had been killed, Gisarm nonchalantly teleports behind them, ordering his minions to chase after the assassin members. But Lloyd simply blasts the demons to stall them. As two demons appear beside Lloyd, Lloyd continues to monitor Gisarm's every move, watching as Gisarm speaks a death curse that weaves through Lloyd's barrier. Seeing as it's best to dodge, Lloyd analyzes the curse, noting how the curse causes cardiac arrest and slays the target struck by the curse. Grimm advises Lloyd to flee, seeing as Gisarm's curse speech is a form of transmuted mana, a complete counter to Lloyd's mana barrier, as the mana barrier can only block spells created from mana. But seeing as transmuted mana is a different form, Lloyd's barrier won't be able to block Gisarm's attacks. Grimm also points out Gisarm's mana is quite vast, being a completely ascended being, explaining that demon servants are ranked 10th amongst demons. Demon Pazuzu was ranked 8th. Grimm himself is ranked 3rd, but Gisarm is a demon lord, placing himself above rank 1 and considered the pinnacle of all demon kind, being able to take on even 100 rank 1 demons alone. Seeing as Gisarm is the real deal, Grimm advises Lloyd to flee, but Lloyd chooses to introduce himself to Gisarm. Gisarm remembers Jade's memories had once mentioned Lloyd the 7th Prince, but regardless, they both prepare to enjoy the oncoming battle. Grimm continues to beg Lloyd to flee, stating that any mana attack will barely scratch a behemoth like Gisarm. But making the first move, Gisarm fires off a small projectile, instantly shattering 2 layers of Lloyd's barrier. Gisarm grows excited, choosing to fire off a volley of spears that chase Lloyd throughout the castle. As he racks his brain for a solution, Gisarm suddenly appears above him, kicking Lloyd towards his volley of spears, but barely thinking quick enough, Lloyd conjures a stone golem to tank the volley of spears. At the same time, the demons finally catch up to the assassin members, all watching as Babylon scales the castle walls to open the castle gates. Back with Lloyd, Gisarm praises Lloyd for surviving the first wave, beginning to make fun of how weak blighted humans are, to have been born with such immense power but to never know how to control them. Gisarm mentions how Jade's teleportation powers called to him, wondering why blighted humans struggle to live amongst humans when they can offer up their bodies to demons who can make full use of blighted cursed bodies. Seeing as Lloyd is speechless, Gisarm warns Lloyd to prepare himself, snapping his fingers, only to teleport a spear into Lloyd's body. Knowing that Lloyd won't be able to react, Gisarm continues to skewer Lloyd with his spears, all whilst Galilea webs the bridge they're on to stall the demons. Seeing as the demons are still pursuing them, Crow curses them to fall, allowing Babylon to finally open the castle gate. But seeing as the demons have broken free from the webbing and curse, Talia steps up. Placing the demons in her sight, Talia slashes her own leg, ordering the others to leave without her. Seeing the demons regenerating, Talia simply continues to hack away at her own body, stalling the demons for the others to flee, but unable to leave his family behind. Galilea chooses to shove Crow and run through the gate, closing the gate behind him only to join Talia. Galilea promises to remain by Talia's side all the way to the very end, giving Talia enough courage to sacrifice her life if it means the demons will disappear as well. Seeing the demons attempting to stop her, Galilea holds them off with his web, watching as Talia cries out, imagining how much pain Jade must have gone through whilst trying to stop Gisarm from invading his mind. As Rin begs for everything to return back to normal, Talia pulls the trigger, all whilst Gisarm mocks Jade's memories of wanting to live peacefully with his friends. Turning to check on Lloyd's skewered corpse, Gisarm realizes he had attacked a stone statue instead, watching as Lloyd appears with a blade aimed at his neck. Nonchalantly teleporting away, Gisarm is amazed to see Lloyd is still standing, but gets thrown off hearing Lloyd wants to move their fight elsewhere. Right on cue, a swarm of fire arrows lay waste to the demons, rescuing Talia and Galilea. As the castle gate is shredded, Albert and the others triumphantly appear, declaring that they'll save Lloyd no matter what. Flashing back, we see Silpha training with her sword, easily carving through training dolls. Unfortunately, the blades Silpha wields bends before she can unleash her full strength, curious as to whether a demon may be able to draw out her full strength. Seeing Albert and the gang have arrived, Ren and the others grow excited, but suddenly Silpha and Albert turn their attention to the assassin members. Demanding to know where Lloyd is, Silpha states she'll decapitate an assassin member for every minute they keep silent, prompting Ren to reveal that Lloyd is fighting someone in the castle. Before Ren can explain who, Babylon reminds Ren that Lloyd wants to keep his powers a secret from his family. So Ren corrects herself, uttering that Lloyd is simply fighting with a very weak person in the castle. Seeing as it's an obvious lie, Silpha prepares to decapitate Ren, but Albert wonders if they should start with an adult first. Seeing as no one believes them, Ren cries that Lloyd is fighting to avenge Jade, one of their family members, but right then a demon rushes Ren. Luckily, Elise and her Fenrir gobbles up the demon, confirming that Ren is indeed telling the truth. Satisfied for now, Albert orders Silpha to go on ahead and support Lloyd, but Ren chooses to cling onto Silpha, refusing to allow Lloyd's true powers to be exposed. Out of nowhere, a volley of spears destroy the bridge the gang are standing on, forcing the demons to swim to land, but the gang realize the demons are trying to trap them from behind. As Albert and the gang rush through the gates, we see Lloyd and Gisarm making some small talk, only for Gisarm to continue pursuing Lloyd with his spears, all whilst Grim wonders why Lloyd is holding a sword. Seeing as Albert and the others are occupying the demons, Lloyd chooses to focus his full attention on Gisarm, all whilst Albert wonders how he can slay these demons. Since the demons are recovering all damage from the spellbound swords, Albert decides he'll have Silpha and Liru the Fenrir deal with them. But at the same time, Silpha tries to order Shiro to jump across the destroyed bridge in order to reach Lloyd. At first, Shiro is hesitant, but seeing as his master is in trouble, Shiro jumps as far as he can, ultimately falling into the water below. Before Silpha can give it a go, the egg-shaped man appears, slashing at Silpha, but Silpha easily defends with her dual blades. The demon is impressed at Silpha's sword play, choosing to reveal itself as a rank 8 demon, a master of the demon blade form. Back with Albert, he continues to barrage the demons with their fire swords, suddenly realizing a demon has snuck up behind him. Luckily, Babylon appears, instantly dislocating the demon's head, only to introduce himself to Albert. Albert wonders how Babylon can slay the demons so easily, but Babylon reveals that Albert resembles Jade, adding that the demons have robbed the humans of their bodies, meaning the best thing they can do is put their bodies to rest. Respecting Babylon's words, Albert finally unsheathes his magic sword, sympathizing to those who had their bodies stolen, only to release a destructive fire spell that covers the demons in flames. At the same time, Silpha and the egg-shaped demon equally match each other's moves, both unleashing devastating moves that cancel each other out, all whilst the assassin members watch in awe. With both swordsmen taking a break, they both seem to be wounded, but the egg-shaped demon simply regenerates any wounds. Having seen Silpha's sword play, the demon declares he'll take Silpha's body, switching his stance, only to appear before Silpha. Barely able to evade the demon's slash, only to hear that the demon's current body belonged to a skilled swordsman who lived countless years, only to have its body ripped away. Having heard enough, Silpha shows off a new trick employing the demon's same slashing attack, shocking everyone. Silpha begins mocking the demon for not being able to copy moves like herself, calling for Shiro only to retrieve a blade Lloyd had gifted to her. Cutting back to when Silpha was training, Lloyd had surprised Silpha with a sword, mentioning how the blade is designed to withstand all of Silpha's might. Lloyd states that since demons still rely on a body to exist, a sword that slays the demon's body will still kill the demon. But in some cases, when a demon's regenerative powers is too strong, the demon must be killed with a single powerful strike. Surprised, Silpha wonders why Lloyd is giving her this sword. But Lloyd mentions how Silpha always holds back when she fights, knowing that Silpha's current swords can't withstand her full force. Embracing Lloyd, Silpha declares the sword's name to be Demon Bane, but the egg-shaped demon can't help but mock the sword's pathetic name. The demon reveals that they had planned from the very start to lure Jade along with the assassin members into giving up their bodies, pissing the assassin members off. Having heard enough, Silpha takes a battle stance, forcing the demon to match her energy, but as they both rush each other, in an instant Silpha minces up the demon, ending the duel in a split second. Flashing back, we see Gisarm speaking to Jade before he had passed, wondering why Jade was smiling as he alludes to a person Gisarm should look out for, even during his last breaths. Weirded out, Gisarm had tried scanning Jade's memories, but failed to retrieve all of them, having been locked out by Jade, but nonetheless Gisarm declares he'll first start a war. Back in the present, Silpha heads over to the body of the egg-shaped man, praying for him to rest in peace, but Silpha also watches the assassin members break down crying. Just then, a massive smoke screen appears, cutting to Lloyd, who wonders if it was the right move. Apparently, whilst Lloyd was evading Gisarm's spears, he was attempting to find a solution to deal with the spears, seeing as they move with random patterns and can easily pierce 2 layers of Lloyd's barriers. Next, Lloyd needs to account for Gisarm's cursed speech, noting how the spears can carry the curse with them. And finally, Lloyd needs to be careful of the Shadow Wolf spell, knowing that if he stays still for more than 2 seconds, Gisarm will simply teleport spears to his location and skewer him. Seeing as Gisarm intends on tiring Lloyd out, Lloyd chooses to cast a spell of his own, conjuring an Inferno Golem that attacks Gisarm, but Gisarm simply teleports to evade. With the Golem steaming up the surrounding area, Lloyd deploys his chi detection technique. Annoyed, he has to continue to monitor Gisarm's location. Reminded by Grimm that he needs to keep moving, Lloyd suddenly realizes something, wondering why he wasn't skewered just now. Thinking back to how the letter appeared in their hideout and how Gisarm had lured the assassin members into his domain, Lloyd realizes Gisarm must have vision of his target before he can skewer them. Therefore, Lloyd brainstorms how he can reach Gisarm with his blade. As Gisarm walks through the mist, he suddenly spots Lloyd approaching behind, but surprisingly a swarm of Lloyds have appeared as well, unable to discern the real one. Forced to tank the stabs, Gisarm identifies Lloyd with the real sword, instantly skewering it, only to praise Lloyd for a pathetic attempt. Gisarm reminds Lloyd that he can heal all wounds in an instant and is immune to physical and magical attacks, but Gisarm can't help but get weirded out by all the clones. Realizing that the skewered Lloyd was fake, Gisarm is suddenly struck with a fire spell from behind, only for the real Lloyd to blend back in with the clones. Healing back his wounds and replacing his clothes, Gisarm admits he is unable to attack since he's unsure of who the real Lloyd is, but with no other choice, Gisarm chooses to unleash a volley of spears in every direction. Spotting a barrier appearing around Lloyd, Gisarm rushes to crush Lloyd's head, but sadly, it was another clone. Wondering what other tricks is up Lloyd's sleeve, Gisarm watches as various clones dodge and weave, all dashing towards Gisarm, exciting Gisarm as he continues to dispatch the clones. At the same time, Lloyd blends in with the crowd, purposely dropping his barrier and instead concealing his presence with an invisibility spell. It's revealed that the sword Lloyd is wielding was a blade called Spelltaker, a blade that can convert absorbed spells into mana or allows the holder of the sword to analyze spells. Barely creeping past Gisarm, Lloyd manages to slash and analyze Jade's teleportation magic, suddenly falling into the mind that once belonged to Jade, only to realize what Jade had been hiding from Gisarm all along. Dismantling his own clones, Lloyd reveals himself, surprising Gisarm as he eggs Lloyd on. Seeing Lloyd not moving, Gisarm tries taunting Lloyd, but Lloyd refuses to budge. Lloyd explains that demons are born powerful, therefore they'll never get to experience what humans go through, something Gisarm brushes off as Lloyd's boring rambling. Having heard enough, Gisarm teleports in for a killing blow, but Lloyd surprisingly is able to intercept the strike and counter with a punch of his own. Terrified at what Lloyd just pulled off, Lloyd explains he had used chi to conceal his intentions. Plus, Lloyd had predicted where Gisarm was teleporting to. Having confirmed Gisarm's techniques are similar to Crow and Grimm's techniques, Lloyd orders Gisarm to get up. Lloyd takes the chance to ask if Gisarm remembers Jade's last words, infuriated when Lloyd utters that Gisarm will lose. Teleporting towards Lloyd, Lloyd manages to predict Gisarm's movements, intercepting and pummeling Gisarm with various attacks. Continuing to cut off Gisarm's movements, Lloyd manages to blast Gisarm with a double-casted spell, sending Gisarm back into the pit of magma created by Lloyd's initial death ray. Knowing that his body won't recover from magma, Gisarm desperately teleports away, but Lloyd is already there to intercept. Lloyd begins remembering back on the times he spent learning magic, reminiscing on kind, scary, and fun people he met along the way. Seeing Gisarm speechless, Lloyd orders that Gisarm try something new, but seeing as Lloyd wants to see his full power, Gisarm reveals his trump card. Gathering all the mana in the surrounding area, Gisarm reveals his mortal dark sphere, encouraging Lloyd to attempt to block it. As Gisarm releases the catastrophic spell onto Lloyd, Lloyd nonchalantly erases it with a wave of his palm, revealing that the spatial class spell, Void, is a similar variation of Gisarm's trump card. When Lloyd had first learned of such a spell, he had experimented with the Void spell in different ways. One way included colliding two voids together, a phenomena that causes both colliding voids to cancel out. Hearing all of this, Gisarm refuses to accept a mere child is capable of demonic-level magic, blinking behind Lloyd only to grab a hold of him. In that moment, Lloyd gives Gisarm a taste of his true mana, mortifying Gisarm and Grimm as they stare off into Lloyd's limitless mana pool. Retaliating with void spells of his own, Lloyd fires them off to hunt down Gisarm, all while Shiro, Liru, and Silpha begin dismantling the remaining demons. Silpha notices that the demons are moving slower than usual, suddenly spotting Rin infecting the demons with her poison. As Albert struggles to see past the mist, he wonders why the sun hasn't risen yet, cutting to Gisarm, who is being absorbed by Lloyd's void spell. Struggling to break free, Gisarm attempts to leave the body behind, but as Jade's body clamps onto Gisarm's demon form, Gisarm realizes there is no escape, desperately impersonating Jade only to beg for his life. Disgusted by Gisarm's pathetic pleas, Lloyd conjures another void to pinch and crush Gisarm, all hearing Gisarm's frustrated cries for help. As Gisarm's presence is completely erased between the two voids that decimate each other, the dark clouds disperse to reveal the long-awaited sunrise, but Lloyd catches a glimpse of what remains from Jade. Flashing back, Jade had once told his guild about the rumors surrounding Lloyd the Seventh Prince, speculating that the Seventh Prince was a prodigy and may be able to lift the curses on the Blighted. With Rin realizing that Jade's speculations were correct, we cut to later that day, where Lloyd is seen helping set up a burial for the deceased. Grimm is curious as to how Lloyd ended up predicting Gisarm's movements, but Lloyd states that after analyzing Jade's teleportation, it was quite easy to calculate an endpoint for each teleportation. Grimm is amazed Lloyd won the battle so easily, but Lloyd reveals that Gisarm wasn't to be toyed with, as it was ultimately Jade who had deciphered the teleportation spell before he passed, explaining why Jade had warned Gisarm along with the reason why he was smiling before he had passed. All Jade had to do after was to simply wait for the day someone would dive into his memories and make use of the spell's weakness to finish of Gisarm. With Rin secretly listening in to Lloyd and Grimm's conversation, she prepares to thank Lloyd for all he's done, but Albert suddenly appears. Approaching Lloyd, Albert asks if Jade was behind everything, having heard that Lloyd was simply dragged along with the assassin members. Before Lloyd can confirm such a thing, Albert states that the assassin members have been restrained, since they are still criminals who had kidnapped Lloyd, but Albert does utter that their punishment for such a crime will be to serve Lloyd for the rest of their lives. Raising his sword to Lloyd's neck, Albert reminds Lloyd that the assassin members are now an extension of Lloyd and also their family of Saloon. Albert demands to know if Lloyd understands the brevity of such a responsibility, surprising everyone when Lloyd utters he'll uphold their family name to ensure his new retainers are well-trained. Satisfied, Albert kneels down, reassuring Lloyd it's okay to ask for help when he needs it. Seeing as everything is settled, Albert takes the chance to give Lloyd a big hug, all whilst Tao arrives, having heard that Lloyd was in trouble. Realizing that she was too late, Tao begins to leave, all whilst Albert chases after her to thank her for fighting off Pazu. With the assassin members being set free, everyone sits down for a tea party. But seeing everyone so stiff, Albert breaks the tension by allowing the assassin members to send Jade off with their own type of celebration. Finally letting loose, both Crow and Tao mourn at the passing of Jade, all whilst Talia attempts to seduce Albert. Brushing off Talia's advance, Albert demands to know all the details behind Lloyd's sticky clothing, all whilst the girls enjoy a refreshing bath. Rin takes the chance to ask Silpha if she can serve Lloyd as well, but Silpha calls for Lloyd to appear, flustering Rin as Lloyd nonchalantly allows it. Hearing Rin continue to doubt herself, Lloyd advises that Rin change her attitude first, reassuring Rin that she'll be accepted no matter who she was in the past, bringing Rin to tears. The season ends with Rin starting her first day as Lloyd's new maid, helping Silpha dress up Lloyd, only for Lloyd to report his adventures to the king, spending the remainder of his free time studying up on some more magic. Continuing from the previous season, we follow Rin entering Lloyd's room to tell him about breakfast. But as Rin greets Shiro and Grim, she is suddenly frightened hearing Lloyd's voice. Lloyd announces that he had perfected the mana block Rin used to conceal her presence, a feat that makes Rin speechless, but she suddenly apologizes, seeing as she was too casual with Lloyd. Lloyd says it's been a couple of days since Rin has been a maid, hearing that she is still struggling with the basic manners and chores she must perform, but regardless, Rin promises to serve Lloyd well. Lloyd says Rin can speak to him casually when they're alone, but Silpha appears, declaring that Rin must not address Lloyd casually no matter what. Lloyd is happy to see Rin is fitting in quite well, but as we cut to later that day, we see that the Lordist Kingdom is undergoing repairs. Lloyd is seen testing out the spring web floors Galilea had installed, all still shocked that Galilea had been elected governor of Lordist Island. But Lloyd reveals he had personally recommended Galilea. Lloyd wants Galilea to make the island a safe haven for those that are blighted, something Galilea promises he'll do in order to carry on Jade's legacy. But the gang wonder if they could create a barrier to protect their island. Grim says they should use divine sorcery, horrifying the others as they realize Grim is a demon. But Grim continues by stating that divine sorcery is special magic given to wielders by God and primarily deals with evil beings. Crow and Talia are skeptical of God's existence, but Grim asks that Lloyd elevate his magic with divine sorcery. But Lloyd hints at some conflict he has with the church in the past. Regardless, Babylon and Rin accompany Lloyd to visit a church, but Lloyd asks why Rin is here, flustering Rin as she says Silpha couldn't make it, plus she just wants to spend time with Lloyd. Babylon says one must serve the church through good deeds before they can be blessed with divine sorcery. So as the gang head inside, Lloyd gleefully greets Father Herbal. Herbal is glad to see that a kid is interested in the church, but upon recognizing it to be Lloyd, Herbal reminds Lloyd that he terrorized them 2 years ago, demanding that Lloyd leave. Right on cue, Escher appears to defuse the situation, reminding Herbal that as holy figures they should forgive when possible, and with Lloyd showing off the adorable Shiro, Herbal agrees to accept Lloyd. With Herbal taking some time to adore Shiro's fluffy fur, he assigns Lloyd, Babylon, and Rin-appropriate attire along with a set of chores to start them off. Sadly, within a few minutes, we see Lloyd bored out of his mind, even accidentally breaking a shiny-looking vase only to mindlessly wander away. Escher cries that Lloyd needs to clean up after his mess, but seeing Lloyd apologetic, Escher says it isn't Lloyd's fault. Escher realizes the broken vase is one of Herbal's favorite antiques, wondering how she'll explain things to Herbal. But Lloyd finally feels bad, agreeing to help tidy up his mess. As Run and Babylon arrive, they ask what Lloyd was like in the past, making Escher reminisce as she says Lloyd only loves magic, suspecting Lloyd is here today to learn divine magic. Apparently 2 years ago, Lloyd would break things as well, having zoned out when doing mundane tasks, and Escher would never scold him seeing how adorable he was. Lloyd wanted Escher to punish him with some divine magic, but Escher says such magic isn't used for discipline, and when Escher asked Lloyd to sing together and annoyed Lloyd left the scene. Out of nowhere, a demonic-looking monster had attacked their church, something we now know was Lloyd's doing. But when some of the debris from the monster's rampage flew towards Lloyd, Escher had dived in front of Lloyd to protect him. Strangely, Escher was more worried about Lloyd's well-being, even after sustaining a decent amount of damage, something that made Lloyd regret his decision as he retracted the demon and confessed. Ren and Babylon are horrified at what Lloyd did in the past, but Escher says Lloyd isn't a demonic spawn, still remembering the time when Lloyd sang with everyone and entranced the other singers with his magnificent performance. Escher declares she'll have Lloyd join them for their recital today, uttering that Saria will be coming. But as we cut to Lloyd, we see him notice some men picking on a girl. The men demand the girl apologize for running into them, but Lloyd recognizes the girl to be Saria, his big sister. Saria is seen asking the men if they're good with playing instruments, immediately turned off when she hears the men don't have knowledge in such things, attempting to leave, but the men aren't finished with her. As the others join Lloyd, they hear that Saria is the 4th princess of the Solemn Kingdom and is a musical prodigy, having mastered all instruments. Sadly, she doesn't care for anything but music. As the townsfolk clear the scene, we see the men getting more aggressive with Saria, but out of nowhere Escher demands the men let Saria go. The men get excited to cop a feel of Escher's body, strangely producing some melodic squeals, but off to the side, Herbal cries that today's recital will be ruined. Babylon fills Lloyd in on the recital featuring Escher and Saria, a performance that is meant to heal those who listen, but this makes Grimm wonder if divine magic can be replicated with a ritual instead of a magic signature. With Lloyd intrigued to learn more about music that heals, he calls upon Run to stop the men, all while Saria is busy scolding the men for pleasing Escher in the wrong way. In mere moments, Ren unleashes her poison, specifically putting Herbal, Saria, Escher, and the 2 men to sleep, a feat accomplished with mana block. Lloyd says by applying the mana block, Ren was able to focus her mana in specific areas. Happy to see that Ren had managed to transmute her poison into something more harmless like knockout gas. Sadly, the thugs are still conscious as Ren's knockout gas wasn't potent enough, and before Babylon offers to knock out the men, Lloyd finally steps up. As the men rush Lloyd with the girls in hand, Lloyd simply snaps his fingers, teleporting the men to a random location, shocking the others, as it seems Lloyd is also trying to learn teleportation magic. Back inside the church, Herbal is told that Babylon and Ren ended up dealing with the thugs, all whilst Babylon and Ren quiver, amazed that Lloyd is carrying on Jade's legacy by attempting to master his teleportation magic. Ren wonders if one day Lloyd could master her technique as well. And with Herbal heading off to prepare for the recital, we see Saria lean in close towards Lloyd, having barely remembered Lloyd to be her younger brother. Escher says it is impressive that a music-obsessed fiend like Saria could still remember Lloyd's name, reminding Escher to invite Lloyd to sing alongside them. But Saria intervenes, declaring that Lloyd isn't ready and instead will watch their performance. With Saria asking Lloyd to pay close attention, Lloyd gets excited to learn more about divine sorcery, especially since it may be replicable with rituals, similar to rain dances. At that moment, both Lloyd and Babylon detect a strange presence, but in the blink of an eye, no traces of it are left behind. As the gang sit down to enjoy the show, we see Escher and Saria take center stage, and with a single note, Saria sets the tone of the recital. Instantly, Escher's voice and Saria's musical notes entrance the audience, a beautiful symphony of sounds that brings the onlookers into tears. Lloyd is amazed by the recital, taking the chance to draw his blade as he slices the magic around him only to analyze the mana signature to resemble a healing spell with a strange pattern. As specks of light rain down and heal the audience, Lloyd admits that Escher's divine magic is something he can't learn just yet, but more interestingly enough, Lloyd can sense a gaze watching over the recital. Lloyd says a being very high above them is watching, wondering if it could be one of God's servants, only to teleport away before Run and Babylon's eyes. Having used Shadow Wolf to teleport to the mana signature watching them, Lloyd is seen flying endlessly through space, suddenly smashing into a strange realm filled with clouds. As Lloyd and Grimm explore the cloud-filled scenery, they stumble onto a structure with their culprit sitting atop the stronghold, declaring that the figure before them was the one gazing at them from above. As Lloyd watches on, the strange figure begins thirsting over Saria and Escher's performance, wondering if he could descend onto them and surprise everyone. Out of nowhere, the figure is struck by lumps of cloud, suddenly checking to see who is the culprit only to shriek upon seeing that Lloyd has entered their paradise. Snapping back into character, Jiriel, the angel, introduces himself, a being that serves the 64 deities of paradise. Jiriel asks how Lloyd entered their domain, especially since the wall between the human realm and their one should have kept anyone out, but Lloyd brushes aside the question, asking if he could be taught divine magic. Jiriel scoffs, seeing as a mere human is asking something of it. But Grimm and Lloyd get annoyed at how cocky Jiriel is acting, prompting Grimm to threaten to spill how Jiriel was creepily spying on the girls. Jiriel says he will only bestow divine magic on those worthy, and seeing as Lloyd isn't someone he fancies, Jiriel demands that Lloyd leave. When Lloyd tries asking once more to be taught divine magic, Jiriel conjures several holy swords that instantly dart towards Lloyd's position, but Lloyd erects a barrier to negate the attack. Seeing as Lloyd is refusing to leave, Jiriel says he'll get a little serious, all whilst Ren is seen panicking since Lloyd hasn't returned yet. Babylon wonders if he and Lloyd detected the same presence earlier, preparing to leave as well only to notice that the clouds outside are awfully gray. Amping up his attacks, Jiriel sends multiple swords at Lloyd this time, forcing him to defend with his blade. Lloyd can't help but get excited seeing as the swords float like feathers, but are as strong as steel, and strangely the divine magic created actual swords, so Lloyd can't analyze and steal the magic used to create the swords. As Lloyd tosses his sword back to Grimm, he reasons that Jiriel will be able to produce an infinite amount of swords as long as he has mana. Therefore, Lloyd conjures a spell of his own. Wanting to test the durability of Jiriel's swords, Lloyd individually conjures a water, fire, earth, and wind spell, simultaneously firing them at Jiriel. But when Jiriel evades the magic, he is horrified to see Lloyd's magic shatter the barrier separating their realms. Seeing as Lloyd has snuck up on him, Jiriel swats Lloyd away, only to declare that his Luxa blades are invincible. Off to the side, Lloyd wonders how he can continue his experiment, pissing off Jiriel. Before Jiriel can react, Lloyd coldly utters the enchantment to activate Shadow Wolf, completely entrapping Jiriel with 4 magic circles that obliterate him with 4 elemental affinities. With the surrounding area being lit up by the explosion, Lloyd is surprised to see Jiriel evade his monstrous attack, but Grimm is horrified to see that Lloyd is trying to master Gisarm's offensive teleportation spell. When Grimm questions if Lloyd should be going all out on Jiriel, Lloyd says he isn't done yet, declaring he'll show off what he learned from Jade as he teleports another fire spell toward Jiriel. Sadly, Jiriel evades once more, choosing to taunt Lloyd as Jiriel states that Lloyd's magic isn't worthy to be blocked by his Luxa, but this fires Lloyd up. Lloyd racks his brain for a solution to catch up with Jiriel's speed, noting how the cast time of his magic spells are giving Jiriel an opening to evade the attacks. And when Jiriel sees Lloyd deep in thought, he takes the chance to rush Lloyd. Lloyd declares he'll conjure the magic spell and teleport at the moment it fires, perfectly catching Jiriel off guard as he's forced to sacrifice multiple Luxas in order to prevent himself from being burnt to a crisp. Seeing as Jiriel still refuses to give up, Lloyd gets excited hearing that Jiriel's Luxa can infinitely regenerate and duplicate, prompting Lloyd to conjure 4 more elemental spells, but this time, the spells perfectly consume Jiriel. Jiriel cries that he was lying and that there is a finite amount of swords he can create, but having been decimated by Lloyd, Jiriel is seen collapse onto the clouds below with a see-through body. Grimm suspects that since Jiriel is made of mana, his body becomes more transparent the weaker he is, and before Jiriel can dissipate for good, Lloyd begins pumping mana into him to rejuvenate him. Jiriel is touched by Lloyd's act of kindness, amazed that Lloyd was so willing to feed him a huge amount of mana, and as Lloyd feeds Grimm some mana as well, Jiriel offers to form a pact with Lloyd and teach him divine magic. Secretly, Jiriel says he'll possess Lloyd and take over his body, but when Jiriel and Lloyd form their pact, Jiriel is horrified to see he has been absorbed into Lloyd's hand. Grimm cries that Jiriel was naive to look down on Lloyd, crying that Lloyd has way more mana than Jiriel. And seeing as he has no choice, Jiriel says to learn divine magic, an angel must engrave their signature onto the caster's soul. Although special use cases like singing are needed to use divine magic, Lloyd is the exception, seeing as Jiriel has formed a pact with him. And as Lloyd begins digging into the essence of divine magic itself, he declares that he's unlocked a new skill. Jiriel mocks Grimm, seeing he wasn't able to bestow anything useful on a Lloyd, but Grimm knows that with his new knowledge on divine magic, Lloyd will be capable of conquering both the netherworld and paradise. Lloyd does admit that he is quite sad to see he picked up divine magic so quickly, revealing that he loves to indulge and study the magic he wants to learn, but seeing as it's still a win overall, Lloyd asks how he can cast the Luxa spell Jiriel was using. With Jiriel asking Lloyd to picture a sword, Jiriel says he is quite impressed by how honest Lloyd's love for magic is, briefly reminding Jiriel of a person that impressed him in the past. As Lloyd manipulates his mana to create his own Luxa blade, Jiriel is horrified to see Lloyd summoning an eldritch-looking monster, a creature with hundreds of bones that wrap around their surroundings. Jiriel says the Luxa changes forms depending on the caster's mana, but before Jiriel can ask Lloyd to continue with his spell, Grimm demands that Lloyd stop before he casts something irreversible. Back with Babylon, he is seen strolling around the church's courtyard, all whilst wondering what this strange smell he's been detecting is. Babylon sees that the nearby flowers are covering up the musk, but wanting to investigate further, Babylon is suddenly stopped by a strange man who asks where Babylon is going. Freezing, Babylon is asked if he wants to be escorted back to the recital, but Babylon says he wants to stay and smell the roses a bit more. The man reveals that he is a pastor that helps guide people around the church, but Babylon points out how the pastor isn't wearing a rosary. Acknowledging the keen observation, the pastor apologizes as he shows off his rosary, suddenly changing the topic as he says the garden is a holy place Babylon should respect. As Shiro and Rin appear, they tell Babylon that the recital will end soon, but suddenly Shiro becomes frightened upon seeing the pastor. As Shiro growls at the pastor, Babylon asks why the pastor's rosary is so shiny, wondering if it's been cleaned often or if it's been barely worn. Before our trio can leave, the pastor begins to act strange, but out of nowhere Lloyd appears, having returned. Wondering what is happening, Lloyd nonchalantly brushes past the pastor, only to be welcomed back by the others. With Lloyd and the others heading back to the recital, Jiriel notices something familiar about the pastor, but regardless, the gang head inside to praise Escher and Saria for their amazing performance. As Lloyd holds back Jiriel from thirsting over the girls, Babylon asks if there is anything special about the garden in the church, but Escher says the garden is where they bury pets that have lost their lives. Babylon reasons that the corpses must be the strange smell he was sensing, but he can't get the weird interaction with the pastor he had out of his mind, something Lloyd picks up on. With Lloyd declaring that he'll be leaving the church, we cut outside to see it pouring, all whilst the pastor curses at himself for losing his previous rosary and his new one almost blew his cover. Suddenly, A tile from the floor opens to reveal some disturbing-looking creatures, prompting the pastor to declare that he'll need to be more careful seeing as their momentous day is soon to come. Back at the Lourdes Castle, we see Jiriel teaching some of the assassin members how to manifest their own luxes with divine magic. But Jiriel is annoyed that Lloyd wants him to create a pathway to speed up how the assassin members conjure their luxes. Before Jiriel can mention the only other person he's blessed in the past with similar privileges, Lloyd asks Jiriel to morph into a smaller form, seeing as his human form stands out too much, and with Grim teasing Jiriel, Jiriel shows off his bird form to the gang. Sitting down, Lloyd hears that Escher's singing was a divine purification spell, magic that can heal and exorcise undeads, ethereals, and demons. Out of nowhere, the thugs Lloyd teleported appears as they reveal themselves to be workers for the Lourdes Kingdom, and before they can get into a fight with Lloyd, Lloyd blasts them with a light spell that tames them. As the thugs promise to behave moving forward, Jiriel is pissed that the men laid hands on Escher and Saria earlier, but at the same time we cut over to Babylon, who seems to be cooking for the people of the church. Babylon is revealed to have stayed behind to make up for Lloyd abruptly leaving the church, and seeing as he was taught divine magic as well, Lloyd had given Babylon specific instructions to help out at the church. At home, Lloyd is greeted by his gorgeous maids, something that makes Jiriel jealous as Lloyd's prince status is a life he wished he had. Upon seeing Lloyd's doll clone, Jiriel wonders if he can take over the body to do devious things, but Grim forbids Jiriel from touching Lloyd's clone. Lloyd says he wants to test out divine sorcery on undeads and ghouls, and before Lloyd can explain more, we see Silpha entering the room. When Lloyd asks if Silpha wants to go ghoul hunting with him, Silpha immediately clears her schedule, only to excitedly accept the invitation. Heading out with Run and Shiro, the gang cross the Great Dean Bridge, the sole connector between the east and west sections of the city. As the gang stroll through town, they hear that the Adventurers Guild have reported sightings of ghouls in town, and sadly the creatures can't be tracked down as their rotting flesh are similar to rotting food waste. Lloyd says his spectral detection can't be used seeing as it's quite crowded, but coincidentally, the gang bump into Escher and Saria, who are out on some shopping. When the girls invite Lloyd to have some pancakes with them, Lloyd jumps on the idea, all heading into the restaurant that specializes in pancakes. Grim is surprised to see Lloyd fixated on something that isn't magic, but Lloyd says that pancakes are quite magical as they are fluffy and delectable, especially when they're combined with honey syrup, a revelation that makes Lloyd's companions droll. With Saria and Lloyd both bonding over their love for pancakes, we see the gang tuck into the fluffy desserts, only for Escher to ask what the gang is doing in town. Escher is surprised to hear they're hunting for ghouls, especially since more people have had to take refuge in the church after being strangely attacked by some ghouls. Lloyd hears that most attacks have occurred on the Dean Bridge, the cemetery to the left of the church and the alley to the right of the church, and interestingly enough, the previous adventurers sent to deal with the ghouls have all gone missing, intriguing Lloyd more. Saria says she wishes for their recital to not be canceled as they'll need to put on a show to celebrate God's birth during the Great Advent Festival, where both the Pope and King will be attending. Seeing as Escher and Saria are working hard to put on the perfect show, the gang get pumped up to wipe out the ghouls to ensure their performance goes well, but Rin seems motivated more than ever. Rin says she is grateful to have experienced so many new things in her new life, declaring she'll protect the city no matter what, and seeing as their first location to search is the Dean Bridge, the gang head towards the sewers to kick off their search. Silpha and Shiro are immediately disgusted by the stenches emanating from the sewers, but when Silpha asks why Lloyd wanted to hunt ghouls in the first place, Lloyd mentions how he was invited by a particular adventurer. Right on cue, Tao appears from the sewers, embracing Lloyd with her smelly body, but Silpha quickly breaks up the reunion. Tao reports that she got lost in the sewers and lost her torch when returning to the entrance, but before Tao can head home to restock on supplies, Lloyd shows off his divine helio spell that lights up their surroundings. With Lloyd leading the way through the sewers, the gang are amazed that Lloyd's helio spell is both lighting up their surroundings and cleansing the surrounding air and water, making it a more appealing place to explore. With Tao now able to use her chi detection due to the clean air, she changes into one of Ren's maid outfits, noting how it's quite tight in the upper region. As the gang enter into a room filled with various paths, Lloyd employs Shiro to help sniff out the ghouls, and as Shiro fights their way through the disgusting stench filling the room, he eventually disappears into a particular pathway. Lloyd wonders if he can use his chi breathing to help scan the surrounding area. But before he can employ the technique, Tao stops him, demanding to know where Lloyd learned how to use chi. Seeing as he doesn't want to blow his cover, Lloyd asks Silpha to scare Tao away, only for Lloyd to ask if Silpha brought her Demonbane sword. Upon hearing that Silpha didn't, Lloyd hints that he has something else he wants Silpha to wield, but this makes Tao jealous. Tao says she wants to compete with Silpha to see who can slay more ghouls, and seeing as the winner will get a one-on-one date with Lloyd, both Ren and Silpha accept Tao's challenge. At that moment, Shiro reappears, having drawn the attention of hundreds of ghouls, pumping up the girls as they get ready to brawl. Lloyd chooses to equip the girls with specially crafted luxes to help with their challenge, asking them to go wild so he can see the capabilities of his divine magic. Kicking off their challenge, Tao decapitates 2 ghouls with her legs, only to slay another 2 by flinging their heads towards them. Before Tao can continue her streak, we see Silpha intercept her attacks, placing Tao to the side only to steal the kills for herself. As Tao and Silpha rush around the room, slaying ghouls, we see Silpha purposely marking Tao to ensure she doesn't get a lead. Silpha calls out Tao for not using the divine gauntlets Lloyd gave her, prompting both girls to brandish their attacks as they rack up 8 kills each. But Tao is impressed Silpha is so strong even without the use of chi, all while Silpha praises Tao for being able to damage her blade with one of her attacks. With Ren racking up 5 kills for herself, she reasons she should stand out by infusing her poison with her Luxa blade, a combination Lloyd hadn't considered yet. Sadly, when Ren tries attacking with the blade, it shatters since divine magic is quite delicate, showing Lloyd that divine magic shouldn't be tampered with. As Ren flees from an attacking ghoul, Lloyd crafts a variation of a Luxa with poison infused into it, this time allowing Ren to melt away the ghoul as the new Luxa is infused with poison sorcery that amplifies its damage. Grimm isn't surprised that Jiriel didn't know such a thing was possible, and now that Lloyd is free to experiment with divine magic, he equips Silpha with a floppy water blade that allows her to reach 23 kills. As both Ren and Tao racking up the same amount of kills, we see all 3 girls neck and neck as they rush towards the 2 remaining ghouls. But out of nowhere, a demonic-looking creature flings the girls aside. With Lloyd and the creature locking eyes, we cut back to the church where the suspicious priest is seen strangling Father Herbal, and before a weird-looking ghost can possess Herbal, we see Escher speechless upon seeing what is happening. With all 3 girls mortally wounded, we see Rim take note of some thread coming off the demonic creature, and as Tao attempts to rush the monster, it sends out a thread that forces Tao to kneel before it. Lloyd is intrigued to see what the creature did to Tao, but before the monster can reach out to Tao, Silpha swats away its hand. As Silpha and Tao get ready to brawl, we see Rim acting strange, having realized something, but out of nowhere the creature sends out a thread towards Lloyd, but Lloyd chooses to meet the thread head-on. In an instant, the creature is overwhelmed by Lloyd's horrific mana capacity, but is still able to dodge a sneak attack from the 3 girls. Rim cries that the creature's spinal cord and automatic reflexes are an indicator of what it is, and as Lloyd inspects the thread he tore off from the creature, he sees that the thread resembles a miniature spinal cord. In the past, Jade had told Ram about the Neuron Blighted, a man that can create spinal threads that can interfere with people's movements via contact, and with threads wrapped around himself, the man can react faster than most beings. Jade says the Neuron Blighted was used to quell a civil war, a horrific fate for the man, seeing as he too was unable to control his blighted powers, and this caused the man to go berserk and slay both opponents and allies. When no one could slay the man, they put a bullet through his heart and threw him into the nearby sea. But rumor has it that he's become a ghoul that moves on his own. The girls are able to see the spinal threads, panicking seeing as the man is a powerful ghoul, but Lloyd says he has never heard of a ghoul retaining memories from their past life. With the girls rushing the ghoul in tandem, we see the creature toss out hundreds of threads to entrap the girls, ultimately throwing them to the ground. At the church, Escher cries for the priest to stop choking Herbal, but the priest simply calls for his ghost friend to possess Escher, as he'll simply dispose of Herbal's body. As the ghost begins to swallow Escher whole, we notice a single dagger slay the ghost and puncture the priest's arm, revealed to be Babylon, who has come to save the day. Seeing as there is a threat, we see the mysterious priest transform before everyone's eyes, taking on a demonic-looking form. When the ghoul glances at Lloyd, it begins its march towards the boy, but the girls instantly rise up, declaring that they've figured out the monster's tricks. With the girls drawing the luxes, we see the creature shooting out its web of threads once more, but this time the girls manage to make their way through the threads. Before the girls can land lethal blows, the ghoul reflexively defends against all 3 attacks, only to blow Tao and Rem back. Seeing an opening, Silpha thrusts her blade towards the monster, but it manages to catch Silpha's blade, giving Rem the chance to mount the creature. Making use of her poison, Rem begins infecting the monster's brain with her neurotoxins, officially paralyzing the ghoul's spinal threads. Tao rushes in for a kick to the head, only to follow up with a flurry of punches, but she swiftly evades, having detected the ghoul hardening its thread in an attempt to cut her. As Tao leaps back, she sees the hardened thread dicing up the ghouls around her, and as the ghoul leaps into the air and buys time for Rem's paralysis to wear off, it fires off another cage of threads at Tao. Countering with a chi tornado, Tao is able to wrap all the threading around her Luxa gauntlet, only to fling the ghoul towards Silpha. Taking a stance, Silpha welcomes the challenge as she employs a dual blade slash that sends the creature flying. But before the girls can celebrate, Silpha says he was able to block the last second since his paralysis wore off. The girls wonder why Silpha is playing around with such a floppy sword, all still wondering how a blighted being is able to control their powers so well. But at the same time, we see the ghoul taking the chance to flee the scene. The creature utters that its master is at the church, cursing the girls for giving it such a hard time. But before the ghoul can head to the surface to have some fun, we see one of its legs suddenly be burned off. With the girls hearing that Lloyd had to go and handle something, we see the ghoul frightened by what Lloyd did to its leg. Flashing back, we see that the ghost following the priest around was a tormented soul always bullied by others, and with nothing to live for the man, eventually became a wraith. The wraith knew he was only capable of possessing weak souls, and on one fateful day the mysterious priest had gifted the wraith the reassembled body of Neuron Blighted, a being he deemed Civil War. Taking on the name, Civil War was grateful for the powerful body as he used it to slaughter the people who tormented him. And when he felt disgusted for doing so, the priest was the only one who welcomed Civil home and took him in. In the present, we see Lloyd's aura overflowing with power, something that freaks Civil out as he understands Lloyd is a being he can't compare to. As Lloyd employs his own Luxa blades, he conjures up a disgusting amount of mana that frightens Civil further. But refusing to allow Lloyd to mess with his master's plan, Civil manages to stitch his leg back on with his threads. As Civil rushes Lloyd, he is forced to duck and weave, all whilst giving up one of his arms to evade the onslaught of the 7 goddess blades Lloyd is using to surround him. And having spotted an opening, Civil rushes to attack Lloyd from behind. Sadly, Lloyd's perfect barrier halts Civil's attempt, and as Civil and the wraith's life flashes before their eyes, we see Lloyd choose to spare him. Lloyd confirms that Civil is no longer reacting reflexively and is now moving on his own, excited to study Civil as Lloyd plans on taking Civil to meet the other Blighted at Lourdes. Lloyd is surprised to see Civil can talk, only to warmly offer Civil a place to stay, words that make Civil tear up. Civil cries that he is grateful for the love Lloyd has given him. But as we flash back, we see the priest forcing Civil to swallow the divine spell Luma Maxima, a contingency plan for whenever Civil is captured. In the blink of an eye, Civil's body is eradicated, alerting the priest to Civil's demise. Although Lloyd is unharmed, Lloyd chooses to retrieve the blade Civil had lodged in his skull, intrigued to see what Civil's master has in store for them. On the surface, Babylon orders Escher to take Herbal to the Adventurers Guild, and although Escher doesn't want to leave Babylon behind, she forces her body to drag Herbal to safety. Babylon admits that he stands no chance against the priest, and before he can make small talk with the priest, we see the priest extend an attack with his demonic arm, although Babylon can evade. He remembers the moment where Lloyd had entrusted him with protecting the church, uttering that Babylon should keep an eye on the mysterious priest and rely on his intuition to survive. As Babylon charges up a spell, he says he is surprisingly calm even when faced against such a powerful being, choosing to toss out some projectiles that don't faze the priest. When the priest extends his claws towards Babylon, he forces Babylon to dig deep, inspired by Lloyd's words as he manages to slip by the priest's defenses. Instantly, Babylon blasts the demonic priest with hundreds of glow-purifying spells, an attack that stalls the priest. Sadly, the priest locates Babylon through all the blinding lights, only to puncture Babylon's heart, swiftly ending their brawl. At the same time, we see Escher taking Herbal to safety, all whilst Lloyd and the gang seem to be waiting out the storm. The priest declares that his own body isn't so easily taken down, turning to leave, but suddenly Babylon springs back up, declaring that the priest had missed his heart. It's revealed that Babylon is able to rearrange his organs and bones in his body, successfully evading the lethal strike the priest dealt. And now that he is close to the priest, Babylon tenses up his body and strikes the priest with a powerful blow. Unfortunately, the priest's stiff body ends up reflecting the impact on a Babylon, inspiring Babylon to surpass his limits. Further infusing mana into his muscles, Babylon fires off a flurry of punches, all whilst hoping that Escher was able to escape successfully. After a few seconds, the priest simply flings Babylon away and into the church, mocking Babylon's pathetic use of divine sorcery. The priest mentions how he too can use divine magic, suddenly casting his own Luxa that manifests into the unholy blade Excalibur, a weapon that terrifies Babylon. The priest gets excited to skewer Babylon, but as we cut over to the Adventurers Guild, we see Katarina handing out towels to other adventurers who have made it out of the pouring rain. At that moment, Escher appears with Herbal's unconscious body, drawing in the attention of everyone. When the adventurers asks if Escher needs any help, Escher tries crying out for help, but she suddenly stops herself. Choosing to leave the scene alone, Escher feels sorry for Babylon, as she could tell that none of the adventurers present could stop the demonic priest, and as Escher runs through the rainy streets alone, she wonders how she can help Babylon. Escher cries out to God to help her, suddenly reminding her of Saria, who had scolded Escher in the past. But as Escher takes a horrific tumble, we see Lloyd appear with an umbrella to shield her from the rain. Lloyd says the others are buying raincoats for them, so Escher should wait here, but strangely Escher cries out for Lloyd to help Babylon. Realizing she was asking a mere child to do the impossible, Escher quickly wipes away her tears, but before she can correct herself, Lloyd has already disappeared. At the church, Lloyd is horrified to see Babylon bleeding horrendously, having been punctured with hundreds of luxes. Cutting over to Babylon's view, we see him speaking with Jade, uttering that he doesn't regret giving up his life to save Escher's. Before Babylon can ask to catch up with Jade, Jade suddenly points Babylon to some singing that seems to rejuvenate Babylon. And as Babylon heads towards the singing, he nonchalantly passes by two mysterious people. Waking up, it's revealed to be Escher, who had been singing effortlessly to heal Babylon, exciting the assassin members as they cry out that Babylon's been asleep for 3 days. Babylon hears that Lloyd had taken his body to Lourdes for Escher to heal, all whilst Tao was stationed at the church, and Silpha told the Adventurers Guild and both Albert and Saria about what transpired on their ghoul hunt. Luckily, Escher and Herbal will stay at the Lourdes Kingdom for safety, and any other workers will be housed at the Saloon Mansion. As for Lloyd, we see him arrive just in time to welcome Babylon back, revealing that he and Jiriel had tried healing Babylon themselves. But it was ultimately Escher who stayed up the past 3 days to sing and heal Babylon. Babylon is grateful for everyone's help, choosing to fill everyone in on the priest's ability to shape-shift and use luxes, but Jiriel refuses to believe he blessed such a demonic man. Babylon adds that his glow divine magic did nothing to the monster. But Lloyd says purification magic only works on those who are guilty, and seeing as that monster of man didn't feel bad for harming Babylon, Lloyd declares he'll need to investigate things further. Speaking to Herbal, Lloyd hears that the priest wanted a wraith to possess both Herbal and Escher to further infiltrate the church, swiftly asking Babylon what made the priest suspicious. Babylon simply utters that he was rounding the garden during his free time, and coincidentally he saw the priest. And seeing as Escher had mentioned that the priest hated her singing, Lloyd deduces that something is off with the garden. As the gang return to the church, they're amazed to see the two crooks have been hard at work tidying things up, but Babylon sees that something is bugging Escher. Lloyd asks Tao if anything happened while he was gone, hearing that Katerina came by to learn about the incident, but right on cue Katerina appears. Katerina is clearly pissed off at what the priest had done, revealing that she had reported the attack to the church's headquarters. At the same time, we follow Pope Gaetan receiving news of the attack by the mysterious priest. And when the Pope and his followers hear that the man was using the Luxus spell, they refuse to believe such a monster could have been using divine magic. The followers even begin accusing Babylon of spreading false rumors. But Gaetan silences everyone, declaring that they'll request Katerina to submit some evidence if they want the church to act on anything. Katerina is clearly pissed that the Pope doesn't believe them, apologizing to the gang, as it seems the Adventurers Guild won't be of much help to them. But Lloyd declares they'll destroy the garden if it means they can gather some evidence. Herbal reminds everyone that such a sacred place shouldn't be tampered with, but Lloyd says he can't use Shiro, seeing as he's been acting weird lately. Taking charge, Crow uses his cursed speech to command the surrounding crows to help them look for any leads nearby, all while Shiro continues to play with a garden pillar nearby. At that moment, we see Saria arriving with Rem and Silpha, all relieved to see that Babylon is safe, but Saria is more annoyed that Escher skipped out on her recital, choosing to punish Escher with some slaps. Saria asks if Escher will be ready for their recital in 3 days, something that makes Escher flinch, but this makes Babylon speak up. Babylon says Escher may still be in danger, so it would be best to cancel the recital. But with a cold glare, Saria says she'll perform alone and that the recital must go on. As Saria leaves, we see Crow point to a location at the center of the garden that his crows are interested in, prompting Silpha to feel around only to trigger a pressure plate. With a hatch now opening up, we see a dense amount of musk fill the surrounding area, a smell that alerts Shiro. Grinning, Lloyd says the hatch is made of a material that prevents detection by magic and chi. And as Lloyd begins his descent into the basement below, we see Babylon wishing everyone the best. Out of nowhere, Escher cries that she wants to go as well, something the gang isn't opposed to, as we see that Escher needs to overcome whatever is plaguing her mind. Following Shiro, we see him still freaked out by the gang's discovery, but refusing to leave his master behind. Shiro rushes after everyone and into the smell pit. On the other side, we see the gang stumble onto a horrifying sight, all speechless upon seeing various massive green test tubes that seem to be preserving strange entities. Flashing back, we follow the moment when Babylon's lifeless body was taken back to Lourdes, something that horrified the assassin members as they refused to believe another one of their family members had been slain. When Escher offered to sing to heal him, Talia had to hold herself back from slapping Escher, reminding Escher that a priest was the one that harmed Babylon. With everyone laying eyes on the disgusting monsters before them, the gang cry out that there are human experiments amongst them as well, plus Silpha points out how they can hear everything happening in the church directly above them. The gang fear that the priest will return soon, but Rem suddenly points out a familiar-looking ghoul similar to the one they fought in the sewers, making Silpha realize that the influx of ghouls in town wasn't a coincidence. Lloyd declares that synthesis combined with alchemy was used to create the horrific beings before them. And interestingly, the priests seem to be experimenting with fusing wraiths into people. Disgustingly, Silpha wonders if the ghouls they fought were the priests' twisted experiments. And worst of all, the priest's monstrous form would indicate that he is a chimera. The gang are all pissed at the priest for toying with the lives of hundreds of people. But off to the side, we see Lloyd fixated on the papers he has found, weirdly jumping in joy at the intel he is gathering. Lloyd secretly wishes to personally inspect the priest's chimera body, but suddenly Silpha and the gang cry that they'll destroy the laboratory, something that Lloyd doesn't want happening. Before Lloyd can talk the gang out of it, a strange serpent creature sneaks up on Lloyd, but Crow has already detected the being's presence, immediately canceling out the creature's projectiles with his cursed speech. Seeing the creature to be a Lamia, the gang wonder how they'll put it down, but Lloyd sternly orders Crow to capture and not slay the monster. With the Lamia charging up a wind breath, we see Rem and Crow rushing towards the eye of the storm, all whilst Galilea erects a web barrier to protect the others. The gang are surprised when the Lamia erects a barrier of her own to ward off Rem's advances. But luckily, Crow's cursed speech easily passes through the mana barrier, ultimately bringing the Lamia to her knees. Upon closer inspection, Lloyd confirms that the Lamia is actually a human, a revelation that makes everyone sick. Seeing as the Lamia is writhing in pain, Crow prepares to put the being out of her misery, but suddenly Escher asks to speak with the poor soul. When Galilea tries pulling Escher away, Lloyd stops Galilea, only for the Lamia to tail whip Escher, a reaction Escher knew was coming seeing how frightened the Lamia is. Escher can only feel sympathy for the girl who had been tortured and forced to fear the priest, but out of nowhere the gang suddenly hear the tunes of a piano being played above them, a phenomena that naturally prompts Escher to sing along. Apparently, when Escher had asked to sing to Babylon, she had made it her mission to revive him with her singing, and it was thanks to her singing for 12 hours straight that ultimately softened the severity of Babylon's lethal wounds. In the present, both Escher's singing and Seria's melody both interweave to cleanse the Lamia from her curse. And interestingly, the girl seems to recognize Escher's singing and Seria's melodies, as it was ultimately their music that gave her the strength to hold onto her humanity. Having come to her senses, the Lamia apologizes for attacking Escher, but Escher can only embrace the poor girl, feeling bad for the horrible experiments performed on her. In the aftermath, we see Albert informed of the secret laboratory beneath the church, but off to the side, we see the Lamia girl given the name Lami, all whilst apologizing, seeing as she doesn't remember who she is. Lloyd reasons that Lami may have been an adventurer in the past, reassuring the girl that she can live in Lordest, where she'll be welcomed with open arms. And interestingly, Lami says she found an old-looking Rosalie left behind by the mysterious priest. As Lloyd inspects the item, he hears that the priest hates all gods, but Lloyd takes the chance to show off the notes he snatched up before the laboratory was completely destroyed. Although Escher is opposed to Lami seeing the papers in fear of her, reliving her traumas, Lloyd corrects her, seeing as the mana signature used to fuse Lami and her serpent body is far too complex for Lloyd to decipher, and it seems their best bet would be for Lami herself to study up and investigate how her monstrous body was created in the first place. Feeling a sense of warmth coming from Lloyd, Lami cries she'll overcome her trauma, something that makes Escher run off. Escher chooses to meet up with Seria, surprised to see Seria is enjoying some home-baked macarons Babylon had whipped up, only to cry that she'll sing alongside Seria for the upcoming Advent Festival. Sadly, later that day, we see Albert adoring Lloyd, only to regretfully announce that the upcoming festival will be canceled. Albert fears that the existence of the priest is too much of a wild card for the festival to be held, and seeing as the gang expect the priest to cause a ruckus during the festival and even tries slaying the Pope, Albert wonders how he can call off the festival without upsetting the townsfolk. Silpha adds that the rosary Lami found was a golden one, an indication that the mysterious priest is one of the 12 bishops that oversee the central church, including the Pope. When Herbal says none of the bishops match the priest's looks, Silpha mentions how the priest can most likely morph their body to blend in. But this isn't enough to convince Herbal that there is a traitor amongst the bishops. Babylon suddenly remembers that the priest didn't need a ritual to cast his luxes and had used a pass, and seeing as only one of the 12 bishops can pull off such divine sorcery, Herbal finally accepts their discovery. As it begins to rain, we see Grimm asking if Jiriel already knew about one of the bishops being a devious person, But Jiriel says he only gave Gaetan the Pope the pass, and Gaetan chose to bless the 11 other bishops, a feature Lloyd used to teach the assassin members how to conjure their own luxes. Seeing as the church still won't acknowledge the dangers the mysterious priest may exhibit, Albert says they'll simply have to continue the festival as planned, but they'll need to isolate each bishop during the festival and interrogate them as a way to protect Gaetan himself. Albert declares that their current party will have to be responsible for protecting Gaetan during the festival. But as we cut to a few hours later, we see a letter being delivered to the central church. Strangely, Bishop Anastasia intercepts the letter when she hears it was meant to be delivered to Gaetan directly from Albert, only to smirk as she runs off into a strange room. With the tap of her shoes, she forces another mysterious-looking hatch to open, only to report the letter to the priest who seems to be in his main laboratory. Anastasia says Albert will be inspecting the church in the coming days, something the priest isn't too concerned about as he unveils the leftover arm of civil war only to consume it with his monstrous hand. In an instant, the priest is able to mimic Civil's powers perfectly, declaring that he has lots of tricks up his sleeve for the festival, only to call forth the various monsters he had created in his lab. Moving forward in time, we see our gang greeting Gaetan and his bishops, all a little sad that it is pouring. Silpha says they'll be skipping Gaetan's welcome ceremony, so Gaetan declares that his bishops and the gang will all split up as instructed by Albert, but this annoys Archbishop Ganmo. Gaetan explains that there is a traitor amongst their ranks, and with Silpha moving Gaetan to a separate location first, she swiftly intercepts Anastasia, revealing that Silpha herself will be partnered with Anastasia. Off to the side, Archbishop Bats says he can fend for himself if anything attacks them, but Archbishop Dante warns Bats to not be so cocky, pissing Bats off. With Rem appearing, she asks for Archbishop Yataro and Dante to join her whilst Bats and Archbishop Melissa will be partying with Crow. Up next is Tao, who is assigned Archbishop Akamaki and Archbishop Aomaki, men that don't really pique Tao's interest. As for Babylon, he is approached by Archbishop Rosilis, who accuses Babylon for lying about the attack on the branch church. And to make things worse, Archbishop Thor also believes Babylon has bad intentions. Following Talia, we see her charming Archbishop Chloe and Ganmo with some wine she prepared. But as we cut over to King Charles at the church, we see he is excited to reunite with Gaetan. Charles reminisces on how Gaetan was Pope long before he became king, and with Albert reminding himself of the plan to isolate the traitor, he heads outside to greet Gaetan. Before Albert can give a formal welcome, we see Charles rushing outside to greet his old friend, only for both men to catch up. Moving inside, Albert continues to monitor the area, but as we flash back, we see that Albert had asked his father if he recognized the shape-shifting priest. Acting strange, Charles says he has no clue who the man is, and with everyone getting settled in and monitoring each other, Albert wishes that things blow over without issue. Following Silpha, she seems to be catching the attention of several guests due to her unique figure, and when Anastasia is strolling by, she asks if Silpha would like to join her as an official member of the church. With a smirk, Silpha says Anastasia will be a formidable foe if she is the traitor, and before they had left the central church, Anastasia had detected and warned Silpha not to carry her blade with her. As Silpha closely watches Anastasia's every move, Anastasia can't help but be annoyed, and seeing as Anastasia had already noticed the crow's crow had positioned as watchbirds over the church, she declares that they must proceed with their plan regardless. Out of nowhere, several loud thumps can be heard in the church, but as we zoom out, we suddenly see a massive creature appear behind the church. With a horrendous roar, the creature's presence is felt all across the kingdom, and before Albert can order the guards to brace themselves, Gaetan mysteriously utters that the gates of hell have opened. As Gaetan utters some cryptic words to Charles, we flash back to see a younger-looking Gaetan who had been selected to be the next pope, only to be brought before several archbishops. To complete the ceremony, Gaetan was struck by multiple Luma Maximus spells to test his purity, all whilst the young boy watched from the sidelines. And when he had passed the test with flying colors, he was given the title of Pope for being pure. Interestingly, Gaetan was concealing a dark secret in his heart, a poison that no divine magic could ever detect nor remove, and after many years Gaetan, the mysterious pope, had managed to keep his identity a secret from everyone. Manically, Gaetan utters that he had planned to unleash his chimera horde, but Albert destroying his branch laboratory slowed things down. Sadly, Gaetan had chosen to rip random holes across town, where his chimeras can run amok. Albert is completely speechless, as the person they are meant to keep safe is actually the traitor. And as Gaetan mysteriously floats onto the nearby ledge, he declares that he'll have to snuff out Albert and Charles to ensure there are no witnesses. Raising up an arm, Gaetan disgustingly has eyes and a mouth sprouting from it, but out of nowhere, Jiriel appears. Gaetan is surprised to see Jiriel, only to question if God even exists, as they still haven't shown themselves to stop all of his evil doings. Albert wonders if he can buy time for Charles to escape, but sadly Gaetan conjures two demonic-looking arms to restrain Albert and Charles, only to show off two additional sharpened arms. Charles utters that he knew Gaetan was the suspect the moment he saw the picture Albert gave him, asking if Gaetan's deceased child had driven him to madness, but Gaetan refuses to answer. As Gaetan's grip begins to tighten, we see Charles asking for Jiriel to save Albert, but Albert cries that Charles needs to live on. With Jiriel unable to move, we see Gaetan preparing to slaughter Charles and Albert, but with the snap of his finger, Lloyd teleports everyone in the vicinity to safety. Completely baffled, Gaetan turns to see Lloyd coldly entering the scene, only to get excited as he realizes that Lloyd may be someone worth taking on. Gaetan remembers brushing past Lloyd in the past, curious as to how a mere child could enter heaven when he himself couldn't, admitting that he wants to wipe out a nation and cause an atrocity to force God to appear before him. With Lloyd and Gaetan standing before each other, Gaetan declares that he'll make Lloyd one of his sacrifices to complete his grand scheme, all whilst Albert and Charles, along with all the others Lloyd had teleported away, are seen in the saloon castle. Diane rushes to ask what happened, prompting Albert and Charles to declare that they'll be taking on the monsters that have appeared in the kingdom. But as we cut back to Gaetan, he is confused to see Lloyd's mana manipulation. Gaetan says he can sense Lloyd is expending a huge amount of mana to conceal his presence. And with Grimm reporting that Escher and Saria are safe, Lloyd orders Jiriel and Grimm to help take out the chimeras on the street. When Jiriel asks to help, Lloyd sternly says Jiriel is too weak, and in the past Grimm had asked why Lloyd doesn't just locate Gaetan with his magic. Lloyd had revealed that Gaetan is also concealing his presence, making him on par with a demon lord, and with Lloyd promising to not be reckless, we see Grimm and Jiriel leave the scene. Attempting to stop Jiriel, Gaetan conjures his unholy Excaliburs, but having taken his eyes off Lloyd, Lloyd masterfully blasts Gaetan with a fire spell. With Gaetan able to block the spell, Lloyd simply compresses the magic to make it more deadly, forcing Gaetan to block the spell with several barriers only to deflect the beam entirely. Teleporting and smacking Gaetan in the face with some chi-infused kicks, Lloyd continues his onslaught by conjuring his 7 godly luxes that puncture and blow Gaetan through the church's ceiling, a spectacle that horrifies Grimm and Jiriel. Seeing the surrounding scenery, Lloyd sternly declares that Gaetan had crossed a line, but Gaetan simply smirks as his unholy Excalibur begins to morph. As fires and unrest spread across town, we see various townsfolk fleeing for cover, and when the first civilian is almost squashed by the projectile of a monster, we see Galilea and his party appear to save the man. Buying time for the civilians, we see Talia along with Chloe and Gammo prepare to brawl with the horde of creatures, prompting Galilea to conjure his Luxa. Flashing back, Lloyd had apparently asked to be part of Saria's upcoming recital, but Albert had asked why Lloyd had asked. Lloyd makes up that he can't fight, so it would be best to stay near Albert himself, an idea Albert isn't opposed to. But with most of the gang leaving, we see Lloyd deduce that the Pope must be the mastermind behind everything. When the assassin members ask why, Lloyd says only the Pope would have the influence and money to construct such massive laboratories. Back in the present, Gaetan demands to know who Lloyd truly is, all whilst wiggling on the blades that Lloyd had pierced him with. When Lloyd doesn't answer, Gatan simply calls for two of his blades, instantly cutting himself free. Seeing as they need to help clear out the chimeras, Grim and Jiriel continue to fly off, but Jiriel fears that Lloyd may need help. Grim says Lloyd is in a bad mood, especially since Gatan had done some foul things to his friends. So with Lloyd's companions giving him some space, we see Lloyd caught off guard when Gatan announces Lloyd to be the god he'll sacrifice. With Gatan conjuring several more Luxes to face Lloyd, Lloyd decides to get serious. All whilst Crow's report to the other assassin members that the Pope is indeed the mastermind. Rem declares that she still needs to be wary of the other archbishops. Wondering if the stitches on Dante's face is an indicator of him being a chimera, but when a monster sneaks up on Rem, a sudden burst of divine energy incinerates the creature. Revealed to be Yataru looking after her, Rem gets freaked out and socks him in the face when Yataru gets too close, all whilst Dante's observer duo. As for Silpha, we see her suddenly dodge a lethal slash from Anastasia, an attack Anastasia had hoped would have put Silpha down, seeing as her cover is blown. Anastasia says she'll be resigning as a bishop and taking on the title of Luna Priestess. But as we cut back to Galilea and his squad, they're caught off guard when a peculiar-looking chimera attacks with some magic. Announcing itself to be Grimoire, the Forbidden Tome, an A-rank chimera that Gammo declares must be the legendary demon that was sealed in the Saloon Kingdom in the past. But funnily, Chloe and Galilea know the chimera before them is a fraud. With Grimoire growling at the gang, we switch to Crow and Bats, drawing the attention of a horde of chimeras, all whilst Melissa is seen manning the church they were stationed at. Bats has full faith that Melissa can protect the church alone, but Crow is confused as to why his crows are acting strange, so he chooses to ascend some buildings to scope out the surrounding area. With Bats following after Crow, they're both speechless when they lay eyes on the nether beast Black Dragon, a double S-rank chimera that has appeared in the center of the kingdom. With its aura alone, the dragon begins burning up the surrounding area, and before Bat can ask Crow what they should do, Crow has already begun making his way towards the dragon. Although Bats is scared, he declares that he should use this moment to prove how strong he has become, swiftly equipping his Luxa only to catch up with Crow. Following Tao, we see her world flipped upside down when she is caught and flung into the ground by a chimera, a being known as Chakra, the Falling Flower's Fist, an A-rank chimera. Aomaki and Akamaki are in disbelief as they had witnessed Tao and Chakra charge each other. And although Tao had parried Chakra's 6 arms, Tao still ended up losing the exchange. When Chakra locks onto the twins, she wishes for the boys to put up a better fight than Tao. But out of nowhere, Tao freakishly arises once more. Chakra is in disbelief as she had sworn Tao was dead. But out of nowhere, one of Chakra's hands is revealed to have been torn off by Tao when they were grappling. Tao says she recognizes Chakra's Falling Flower Fist martial art style, seeing as it was a phantom martial art style that vanished after only one generation when it couldn't be passed on, information that allows Tao to deduce that the Wraith of Chakra is manning the chimera before her. Flustered, Chakra cries that her Rakikan techniques are flawless now, that her new body has additional body parts that surpass human limits. But Tao asks why Chakra wanted to be strong. Tao herself admits that she had trained hard to become popular, and before Chakra can voice her disbelief, Tao lets down her hair only to exude a powerful aura. Instantly, Chakra smirks, seeing as she has found a worthy opponent, only to take a battle stance. With Tao matching Chakra's bloodlust, Chakra sees Tao's warrior symbol only to remember a time when her master had told her to train continuously until she mastered her techniques. But Chakra was too impatient, so she chose to become a chimera to surpass her master's expectations. As Tao begins to focus, she begins gathering the chi around her, slowly infusing and condensing that chi to empower her body. When Chakra readies herself to take on Tao head-on, Chakra notices the air around them begin to quake, all whilst the ground beneath Tao begins to shatter. In the blink of an eye, Tao appears before Chakra with an unstoppable kick. Unable to move, Chakra can only remember back to the moment when she had begged others to learn her martial arts fighting style. But sadly, no one would listen to Chakra, since she is inferior to Hyakkin. Pissed, Chakra had tried to jump off a cliff to spite her peers, and when she became a wraith, it was Gatan that reached out a helping hand. With Tao's kick being so strong, we notice Chakra's eyes popping out from their sockets, and when Tao follows up with a punch, we see Chakra being blown apart by the sheer impact. Chakra yearns for her fighting style to live on, but with her chimera body unable to move, we see the twins baffled, seeing how amazing Tao was to have negated Chakra's advances all whilst managing to slay the enemy before her. Strangely, Chakra is still alive, and before the twins can blast her with divine magic, Tao is seen commending Chakra for an amazing fight, words that finally allow Chakra to pass on without any regrets. Back with Galilea, we see him realize that Talia can't use her powers on the chimeras, seeing as they're basically puppets. Plus, Grimoire continues to regenerate any wounds, all whilst blasting the gang with spells. Galilea chooses to order Chloe and Ganmo to head back to their church they were manning, only for Chloe and Galilea to prepare to slay Grimoire. Before our duo can do anything, a strange kid appears, blowing off Grimoire's head with a kick, following up with a disgusting spell that shreds the remainder of Grimoire's body, leaving behind a lone wraith. The kid orders our duo to deal with Grimoire, only to zip away, leaving the wraith to admit that it was a fan of Grimoire. Talia simply slays the wraith with a divine spell, only to wonder where she recognizes the kid from.